All right, let's call the meeting to order. Thanks everybody for joining us on a extremely winter day. I think we all got caught off guard, thought winter might miss us this year. Nice to see it has not. Lynette, would you help us with roll call, please?
Here.
Here. Thanks, Lynette. Thanks again for everybody joining us. At this time, looking at the first couple of items, approval of the minutes from two separate conference calls. Do we need to separate them, or can they be done in one motion?
I would move approval of the December 9th and December 22nd minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Regent Barrett. Any discussion? Members of the board? Members of the audience? Great, seeing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as they are written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, minutes pass. My comments are brief. It's nice to see already, Clay, that we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule and a little different than how you did it. Obviously, a couple of items on this agenda that we are anticipating a lot of communication and discussion on today, and would encourage everyone that is here today to make sure that you please speak your will and bring any question that you've got forth. As you know, this board is so committed to operating in good faith, and we look forward to the opportunity to have discussions about some things that have popped up on our agenda, and we look forward to it. The only other comment that I'd make is, while Sheila and Clay are at the table, I think they better know that we're expecting to get twice as much done in twice as quick a time over the next few months.
No problem.
Thanks. Great. This next item on the agenda, President Engstrom, if you would be willing to grab the agenda at the moment and talk a little bit about what's been happening in your neck of the woods.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. I do want to take this opportunity to talk about the recent reported sexual assaults at the University of Montana, Missoula, and give you an update on the situation there. I will begin by telling you that I held a community forum 2 nights ago in Missoula. About 200 people were in attendance, and I'm going to speak with you the way that I spoke to that community forum. A couple of you were actually there, and I appreciated that support a great deal. But I do want to speak as openly and straightforwardly as I can about the matter, and make sure that I answer any questions that you have. As I do this, please keep in mind that there are aspects of confidentiality that I need to respect. We are talking about students, and in no way will I name any particular student or speak to any specific action regarding a student. Let me just preface this by saying that the community forum the other night was probably the most challenging thing that I've done in my professional career. Not so much that the audience was hostile or anything like that. In fact, the audience was very constructive, very engaged, and I would say very appreciative of the conversation. But the topic of discussion was clearly among the most serious topics that any of us can deal with, and it gave us all at the university, and continues to give us great pain, that this is an issue that we are confronting. So with that, let me just speak from my notes of the other night and bring you up to speed the way I did the community. So let me speak to some of the facts that I can share at this point. So on December 5th and 6th, 2 female students reported to an employee, one of our employees, that they had been assaulted. These reported assaults took place as 2 separate events during the months of November and December. Both of these events were immediately reported upward from the employee, and the employee met with me the next day to inform me. So I consulted with Lucy France, the director of our Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action Office, And she is the person who oversees our obligations to Title IX. Title IX, is the set of federal regulations that apply in such matters. So Lucy immediately met with the employee and with both female students. At the same time, I assembled a group that began meeting almost daily and has for the entire time. That group includes Lucy France, Charles Couture, our Dean of Students. He is the person who oversees the Student Conduct Code at the university. David Aronofsky, our University Legal Counsel. Jim Foley, our Vice President for External Relations. So that has been the group of 5 people that has been meeting on essentially a daily basis throughout this. We contacted at that first meeting Gary Taylor, the Director of Public Safety, to make sure that our public safety folks were fully informed, and we also directed him to make contact with the Missoula Police Department, which he did at that time. On December 13th, we decided to contract with an outside person to assist in our investigation. And that individual, as many of you know, and many of you know her, is Diane Bars, a highly regarded member of our legal system here in Montana. So the direct investigative team is made up of 3 people, Diane Bars, Lucy France, and Charles Couture. As a university, we are legally obligated through Title IX to conduct our own investigation, regardless of the involvement of law enforcement. The Missoula Police Department makes its own determination as to whether to begin an investigation based on the information at their disposal. In addition, I want you to know that because of allegations that drugs have been involved, that puts it into a federal law enforcement jurisdiction, and we have been in contact with federal law enforcement representatives in Missoula. Whether either of those law enforcement agencies actually take on an investigation is up to them, and I do not have direct knowledge about the extent of their investigations. But our investigation continues aggressively. The team interviewed over 30 people before the holiday break, and as you can imagine, during the break it's been a little difficult to bring student witnesses in, but it is moving full speed ahead again now. Diane Bars provided a report to us on December 31st, which we posted and made public, and we will expect the next report from her at the end of January. So as of today, or as of now, we are not in a position to identify specific individuals as perpetrators, but when we are in that position, I want to assure you that we will take every action available to us through our Student Conduct Code and, if applicable, the Student Athlete Conduct Code. But my primary message at this point is to help you understand that within a matter of days of the reports from these 2 students, the students had access to our Sexual Assault Resource Center. All relevant law enforcement was notified. All appropriate notifications within the university had occurred, and our own investigation was underway. Now, I want to say just a few words about the Student Conduct Code and how we have used it on campus. So the Student Conduct Code covers a wide range of behaviors and actions, ranging from plagiarism to the kinds of matters that we're talking about here. When a student allegedly violates our conduct code, that student is called before our Dean of Students, Dean Couture. The dean investigates the matter and puts into effect what he sees as an appropriate sanction. The student may appeal that sanction to the university court. The university court goes through a set of proceedings then and makes a recommendation to the president. So we've had a few events over the course of this past fall or this past year that have invoked the Student Conduct Code for various reasons, some of them fairly minor, some of them more serious, some of them public, some of them not. But I want to assure you that in every case that has been public and in every case that has not been public, sanctions have been put in place appropriately on a rapid time frame, and the Student Conduct Code process has worked and continues to work well on the university campus. Now, during the course of this investigation that initiated with those 2 student reports in December, 3 other reports of sexual assaults have surfaced, reportedly occurring roughly a year or so ago, give or take a month or two. The reports or the alleged incidents came to our attention only recently, however, and we have incorporated them into our investigation. I want to use those other incidents to talk to you about a couple of processes. The first of these involves the role of what we call SARC, the student. SARC is a part of Curry Health Center, and so it is a recognized healthcare organization, or within a recognized healthcare organization. And SARC is designed to be a free and confidential resource to students who think they have been subjected to sexual assault. We obviously want students to make use of SARC because it is a helpful resource for them. The promise of confidentiality without the requirement for reporting a sexual assault encourages them to make use of it. We have a great staff at SARC, and they are experienced in working with students who need assistance of this type. SARC personnel can and do refer students to other resources, healthcare resources on or off campus, counseling resources, support groups, and law enforcement, including Missoula Police Department as well as our Public Safety. SARC communicates to victims that if the victim wants to pursue an investigation, there are avenues are available to do so, but the student must make that choice. The student has to make the choice to pursue an investigation. SARC cannot report the event further without the student initiating the report, and our students who come into SARC are told that clearly in writing. One of the cases recently came to light involved a female student who went to the police somewhat over a year ago reporting sexual assault. We have no indication at this time that she reported to anyone on our campus. As we understand it, the police did not feel they had sufficient evidence to pursue that case, to take any action, but an officer did report to one of our campus employees that an incident of some sort had taken place and allegedly involved some of our students. That campus employee did not report the incident to the supervisor in that case, and this is the gap in reporting that was referred to by our investigator, Diane Bars. While it should have been reported up the line, no additional action could have been taken in any case without the consent or without the female herself reporting the incident to us. Thorough reporting is critical to ensuring really 2 things: that the student has access to appropriate care and that law enforcement is involved. In this case, law enforcement is the group that brought us the news, and so that requirement had been covered already. Well, let me turn to some additional actions that we are taking to make the campus a safer place and to improve our coordination and communication in such instances. Last week, I wrote a memo to my cabinet, and you all have received a copy of that memo. And in that memo, I spoke to 5 actions that we are taking. The first of those spoke to the investigation itself, and the memo directed our investigating team to pursue as aggressively and as rapidly as they possibly can, consistent with getting good information. One of the challenges in cases like these are that members of the public hear things on the street, and many people are ready to put in place a conviction based on what they hear. We have stressed over and over that we will take action based on evidence and only based on evidence. Second point in that campus memo has to do with campus education. So I have charged our Vice President for Student Affairs, Teresa Branch, to develop a dramatically enhanced educational program that begins next Monday when students return to campus. The message of that educational program has to be threefold. 1, Sexual assault is intolerable at the university, and we will do everything in our power to remove those who commit sexual assault from our environment. 2, excellent resources are available on campus to assist victims of sexual assault, and we have a dedicated staff that is ready to help. The third message is that sexual assault is the responsibility of all of us, and we have to work as a community to do everything we can to help students protect themselves and prevent them from getting in this kind of a situation. The third point of the memo has to do with consequences and sanctions. It is public knowledge that some of our students have been the subject of recent legal actions. And for those students for whom legal matters are settled, I expect to see swift and appropriate sanctions put in place under both the Student Conduct Code and, where applicable, the Student Athlete Conduct Code. And so for those individuals, those actions have been taken, or in recent cases, they are being taken. Of course, I will personally oversee all of that activity. In the meantime, we will continue our investigation. We will report out when we know substantive information. And let me just close my comments with reinforcing again how seriously we take this matter, how heartfelt our concern is for the students involved. These kinds of incidents ruin lives, have the potential to ruin lives on both sides of the incident. And so we need to do everything we can to prevent this. If there is a positive outcome of this, is that we are clearly raising the level of conversation about sexual assault on our campus and on our campuses. While we have had these very serious incidents, if you read the Chronicle, you listen to the news, we all know that this is becoming an ever more present part of our society. Again, preventing this on all of our campuses, and I'm prepared to have the University of Montana and Missoula lead the way in that discussion. I'll conclude there, and I'm happy to answer any questions or respond to any concerns that you might have. If there are actions that you as a board feel that we should be taking as a university that you don't see us taking, I would certainly appreciate hearing those. Thank you.
President Engstrom, thank you for your willingness to bring this to the table at our request. And I think one of the challenges here is that we're recognizing that these challenges are part of the world that we live in, and the fact that it landed on your campus at this time, I thank you for having the strength to grab it the way that you have. And I think you're right. I think a few of us have some thoughts, and it's not excluded to the folks at the table, but we'll start with Regent Barrett. Regent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment. I was able to attend the public meeting to which President Engstrom refers, and I'm glad I was there. I will say they were pushing a couple hundred people from the community. I think overall, I felt the room was very interested. I think very supportive of the fact that the university had taken hold of this and was moving swiftly and with much focus. It doesn't mean everybody was a cheerleader. There were positive and negative comments, but the sense of everything was, yes, there's a problem, but you're really jumping on it. And I think as a whole, the community was very appreciative of that, as we are sitting here. But that was clearly the sense I had as I was in the room.
Thank you, Regent Barrett. Regent Tuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Engstrom, I had a question. In your statement, you had mentioned that it appears to be there's a difference between the Student Conduct Code and then there's another document called the Student Athlete Conduct Code. I was unaware that perhaps there was two different conduct codes. Could you speak to that issue and what the difference perhaps is?
Yes, Regent Tuss, members of the board. First of all, the Student Conduct Code is a concise, single document or set of policies and procedures that apply to every student on the campus, including student athletes. In addition, the coaches, the athletic staff, have expectations and standards of student athletes that may not be covered by the student conduct code. Expectations in terms of things like curfews and behavior during practices, behavior during games, things like that. Even academic expectations and so on. Those are not presently codified in a single concise document, but rather they are a set of expectations that each of the coaches communicates to his or her team members. But what I am asking for in this review is that the athletic program does put together a concise set of policies and procedures, expectations that can be literally handed to a student, and we all can see exactly what that is. So the student athlete conduct code is a subset, in a way, an extension, I guess you would say, of the student conduct code.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you, President Engstrom, for your comments. And I think that one thing echoed what I'm thinking, which is that this is a great opportunity it's raising an important conversation. And in fact, probably one of the most important conversations that we need to be having as a system, because the safety of our students is and ought to be the Regents' top priority. And for that reason, I think we all take these reports and these incidents very seriously. And what I'm hoping is that the lessons learned in the process that's happening at UM and across the state with these sexual assaults can be applied system-wide to ensure that all university students have the safe environment that they deserve. Personally, I applaud you for so directly confronting this very, very difficult issue, and I'm encouraged that you're going to continue these investigations in a fair and transparent way. But in addition, one thing that I think would be good on a system-wide level is if campus leaders could meet together to discuss sexual assault prevention and present a report on best practices, on perhaps recommendations for system-wide changes that can be made at next board meeting, so that we can take a broader look at this issue and see what lessons learned we can take from the UM example and apply across the system. And also, because this is such a great opportunity to have this important discussion, I'd encourage campuses to be proactive about starting conversations on their own campuses with similar public forums, so that we can try and talk about this on a broader base.
Thank you. And thank you, Regent Teal. I think that that's a wonderful idea to see what's happening across the system and see how we can be proactive from the table and on our campuses in this regard. As you articulated, nothing can be more important than the safety of our students across the Montana University system. President Engstrom, I thank you for coming to the table today and presenting this, as did Regent Buchanan. Thank you. This is very delicate. It's a very delicate situation, and I appreciate the extra efforts that you and each of your folks at the University of Montana have taken to ensure that the substantive and procedural due process rights are protected of all of those involved, as well as the privacy rights. It seems sometimes that we get so caught up in the situation that sometimes those get forgotten, and I appreciate the extra efforts that you and all involved have made in that regard. And I look forward to being a part of the conversation as this moves forward on each of the campuses across Montana. So I thank you, and it is unfortunate that you have to address this on your campus, or that any of us have to in the Montana University system, but I appreciate the expertise and the professionalism with which you have done so. Thank you.
President Engstrom.
Regent McLean and Regent Teal, both, thank you for your comments and your support. I did want to amplify Regent McLean what you just said about protecting the privacy of all students involved, victims and witnesses and potential perpetrators. One of the actions that we have taken that I spoke to was to assemble this group of 5 people that meets on essentially a daily basis to review where we are. The expertise within that group with respect to student confidentiality, Title IX, and so on is great.
I think you've heard it here, and it doesn't, I think it does bear repeating, is that without the safety and security of our students, it changes everything. And we're very aware of that. And this has been, we've had a lot of conversations. Very quickly. It needs to be addressed effectively. There's many different aspects of it. I want to especially thank you for pulling together the public forum. I don't think that this should be dealt in simply in private. This is something that needs to be discussed in that type of a forum. And I don't think it needs to be discussed as Regent Teal had mentioned too. It doesn't need to be discussed just once. I think the other campuses can gather something from this and use this as an opportunity to increase the awareness for all of our, not just our students, but our faculty, our administration, and the public as well. I would like to see and encourage that if you don't already plan on this, is to come back after the 28th when you've had some information that you can refer to, and it gives you a better idea of where things stand, especially with the policies and procedures. And I would encourage you to once again meet with the public and discuss things with them and hear what their response is. In addition to it, I don't know, and this is a question to you, if there's been any efforts to have a similar type of conversation with the students and to enter into that discussion as well. I don't think there can be enough opportunities in order to have that conversation. This is critical to us. And so, again, I want to thank you for taking the leadership in this and hitting it head on and getting the correct information and allowing your staff and others to do their job as well in order to collect that information and make a decision.
Regent Robinson, members of the board, we will be having discussions with our students. Our students have not been back yet. We start back on Monday with spring semester. So essentially during the unfolding of these events, it has occurred mostly over the Christmas break. So we have not really had organized discussions with our students as of yet since this came about. However, I'll be giving a report to the campus next Wednesday at 4 o'clock on sort of a mid-year report to the campus on the state of the university in a general sense, which I was going to do anyway. I will include in that mid-year report, of course, some comments about this and welcome students then to a series of 4 conversations that we are in the process of scheduling. Vice President Brantz is taking charge of that, and if she hasn't been in conversation with President Gursky back there, she will be very shortly. But we'll have over the first 2 to 3 weeks of the spring semester about 4 sessions designed for students that really unfold the same way that the community discussion did the other night. It's a very interactive discussion about how we can do better to prevent this sort of thing. And I will also tell you that on a individual student basis, both as a result of the forum the other night, which turned out to be attended by quite a few students, but also just walking around campus, individual students are already coming forward with suggestions about educational programming. We've started to receive emails. For example, one particular helpful suggestion that we had was a few people have come forward and said, have you heard of the organization Men Can Stop Rape? It's a national organization. They will come to a campus and put on a 2-day workshop, essentially, and at the same time initiate a chapter on your campus, a chapter called Men Can Stop Rape. So we are already in contact with that organization as a result of that input from a student and a parent, actually, in that case. And we will be bringing that group to campus just as soon as we can get them scheduled. So again, I think the positive aspect of this is that it is raising the level of dialogue on our campus and kind of giving people the opportunity to say, I have something to submit or something to say about this, something to suggest about this. Thank you.
Mr. Christian?
Mr. Chairman, having two delightful young ladies on several of our campuses in the system, I absolutely can assure you there is no greater priority in my mind than student safety. It hits pretty close to home, and that's a good thing. But I think to Regent Robinson, Regent Teal's comments about what do we do to learn from this, that I appreciate President Engstrom's comments. We absolutely need to learn and move forward from this horrible incident, how we can help other students and other campuses be more proactive and a safer place to be. The commissioner and I were just visiting. We will see to it that we create the kind of things that you're talking about in terms of an internal look on the other campuses to see what sort of instances may arise or have arisen in the past that need to be dealt with. But more importantly, I think this education piece is just so important. We will find a way that we can help learn from this under President Engstrom's direction, where it can extend to the other campuses, where this can be an absolute system-wide process to try to make our campuses as safe as we can. And we'll work with the presidents and the chancellors to see that we bring something back to the March meeting. But it won't stop in March either. It's a long-term commitment. I know the campuses are nodding their heads that they're in favor, and certainly the commissioner's office will carry that torch as well. But it's a very important piece, and we will see that we make progress on it, and we continue to update the board on it.
Madam Commissioner?
Thank you. And I just wanted to advise the board that for many years I have attended on some campus or another wonderful, inspiring orientation sessions at the beginning of campus, particularly for new students. And this issue in particular is covered very well, creatively, and obviously what we all learn is once is not enough, one shot, one educational session. So what I appreciate about what President Engstrom is saying and what Clayton Christian has just suggested is that we all have to work together. It has to be ongoing. And I think only to the fact that in a generation, maybe two since I've been a college student, but you think of the mores and the change in terms of tolerance for tobacco use, where, it used to be everywhere or tolerated, and increasingly the growing intolerance or a wink or a nod toward driving under the influence. That is changing. And I think what we're learning, and we would like to help be part of that, President Engstrom and campus leaders, and I think chancellors and deans, if you have something to add to this discussion, please make sure that Vice Chairman Buchanan sees you wave your hand, because we all need to be involved in changing the culture, particularly here in Montana. No matter how hard they work on it nationally, this is where we need to focus it. And I think we've got remarkable student leaders and faculty leaders, and I'm sure they're prepared to be involved, because the state and the campuses that begin to get this right will get the attention they deserve. For first of all, because we've gotten the negative attention for students who don't realize that their safety can be in jeopardy 365 days of the year, but that we're all part of, everyone's part of their future in education. That's what we're about. So I think that we can make a system, we can perhaps now turn this to a real positive, President Engstrom, and and lead the way in a real systemic, long-term approach to changing looking the other way if there are sexual assaults, that they simply cannot be tolerated whatsoever.
Thanks, Madam Commissioner, and I would reiterate her comment. If there's other leadership that would like to weigh in, that would be fantastic. From my perspective, and I want to echo this board's voice, that this is intolerable, and although we recognize this thing is something that will continue to occur, I'm so thankful that we've reacted the way that we have. And as the process is unfolding, what can we continue to do to support President Engstrom and other leadership when these types of issues do surface is echo exactly what Sheila just said. I mean, we have to be, as a board, as tough on this issue in our individual executive evaluations as we are on the system as a whole when we discuss these topics. And the word that I keep hearing us is who's applying the accountability, who's in charge of the accountability here, and it is us that needs to continue to make these a priority. And I think that the way that we've turned this into an opportunity to get ahead of it and be proactive in some other arenas and make it a constant priority for the system is absolutely appropriate.
Yes.
President Cruzado.
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I just want to extend my empathy to President Engstrom and our colleagues in the University of Montana Missoula campus, and to every student there. We have had our share of difficult times in Bozeman as well. So we know that there's an opportunity for us to learn and grow and use these opportunities to be a better campus and better people. In Bozeman, Leslie Taylor and our people from EEO have been working very diligently in order to apply new regulations from Title IX and the Dear Colleague letter on sexual violence. Leslie has been conducting trainings with MSU Billings and the COT. Training sessions with our police officers are scheduled for this month. In March, we have training sessions for faculty members. We have had to go to the website and each of us watch a video and complete a test on sexual harassment. And we have been very insistent on setting the tone at the top so that everybody understands that these are things that we are going to be responsible. We're going to take it very seriously. But again, this is something that we just need to hold hands and make sure that our students feel safe and that we all learn valuable lessons from this experience.
Thanks, President Cruzado. Ms. Kursky.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my comments. President Engstrom, as the students of the University of Montana, we certainly appreciate your leadership, and I do think that has been publicly and privately shared. Regent Teal, thank you for bringing suggestions that we had suggested as students. I would like the board to know that a system-wide report is very strong, suggestions that the students would like to see put forth. As a student at the University of Montana, this is not an issue that is siloed in Missoula. This is an issue that has been publicly been brought to the public light. It is an issue that Montana must address, and it is certainly an issue looking at the demographics that we serve and the constituents that we serve must not lightly be taken, but cautiously step forward into solutions. With that being said, I don't know how much more passion I can say this with, but reports, meetings, committees, discussions, void of student input will not have long-lasting results. We are talking about a culture and a generation shift that now communicates entirely over Facebook. We are now talking about a culture and a generational shift that is different from even 5 years ago. To not have that cultural and generational perspective would be an error and an overlook. And while I know that is not the heart of this board, I just want to passionately encourage that we do not leave, especially on this issue, students void in this conversation. Thank you.
Great comments. Thank you. Regent Robinson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just had one other comment, and I think it's really important for us to keep this in mind, and all the action that has been taken so far is appropriate and will happen is great to have some accountability as we move forward. But I think it also bears saying that we need to acknowledge those victims that have been a part of these incidents, that I hope they understand, and I hope that their families understand that we take this very seriously. I think with Mr. Christian's statement about his daughters, I too have 2 daughters, and they're not of college age yet, but I would certainly love them to enter into our college, our university system here. And that's where it really comes home is that, you know, these parents have entrusted their kids with us. And so I think it bears speaking to them as well so that they understand that we're taking definitive action. And again, President Engstrom, I thank you for your leadership in this, because it could apply to any one of our campuses, but I happen to land on your campus right now. And I just want those parents to understand that we will continue to create that environment, that it's safe for their children to come and be educated and continue on with their lives, because this is such an important part of their lives. So that I want them to know that we're acknowledging what they're going through now. I can't imagine what they're going through, but we're acknowledging how it's affected not just that particular individual or individuals, but their families as well.
Thanks, Regent Robinson. Regent Teal.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Ms. Gursky mentioned, that students across the state I think are very interested in having this conversation everywhere. This is not siloed at University of Montana. This is a problem that happens on all of our campuses, and it's something that we need to address across all of our campuses. And students have a very important voice in that discussion, as the ones who are both the perpetrators and victims of sexual assault. And so I'm excited by the discussion that we've been having, that we can learn from these incidents, that we can learn from this situation, and that we can make Montana hopefully a leader in preventing sexual assault in the future. So thanks for the conversation.
Any other comments or thoughts from other folks in the room? President Engstrom.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'd just like to close with a couple of other thoughts. First of all, one of the things that makes this so difficult for us as a campus, so painful for us as a campus, is that we pride ourselves so much in the environment that we do offer our students. And almost every one of our students is such a fine citizen who respects their fellow students and respects everybody in the community. And so to have these kinds of incidents happen by some small number of students yet to be known makes it really painful, because the overall environment at the University of Montana, Missoula is a superb environment, one that allows people to fulfill their dreams through education, and we don't want to compromise that in any way. My last comment is that I am keenly aware that these kinds of incidents can do long-lasting damage to an institution and to the people at that institution. When we assembled the 5-person group, the first words out of my mouth were, one, we are going to do the right thing, we're going to get at the truth, and we are going to be as open as we possibly can be about this. The damage done to institutions usually is not from the incident itself, but from how the institution has handled that incident. And of course, there are assumptions on the part of some citizens out there that that's how we will handle the incident. And I want to make sure that you know that we will be as proactive as we possibly can about providing information along the way, as much as we possibly can within the limits of our confidentiality. So at any time, if any of you have any questions or feel that there's the need for any public information to be given, and we're not giving it, please let me know. Thank you.
It's a great comment. Any public comment on this issue? No, I just wrap up by saying it is extremely unfortunate that it's occurring, but I couldn't be more thankful that it's occurring under your watch, President Engstrom. You clearly have the compassion driving the good faith that's required to get us through this process. Thank you for your leadership and everybody on your campus as well. Okay, let me step back a second, and we have at least one introduction to make, and I apologize I overlooked it. We have a new member of our team here joining us now from Havre, Chancellor Jim Limbaugh. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. Excellent. And I'm guessing you with Denise's office, is that right? Great. Thank you, Janice, for joining us very much. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam.
Yes.
President Cruzado.
Mr. Chair, I also want to recognize that we have in attendance the interim dean from Montana State University College of Technology in Great Falls, Dr. Gwen Joseph.
And Dan, we skipped right past our protocol of typically asking for some opening remarks from the host, Dean Bingham.
Thank you so much. Maybe just a few comments. I'd like to welcome the board here at Helena. We always enjoy you coming and visiting us and participating, and also being in our fishbowl. If you haven't noticed that our students are surrounding you, they're watching you and paying attention to what's happening, and so that's part of our open, transparent system we strive for here at Helena. I would also like to introduce Dr. Monica Ramirez, who is our new Dean of Academics, and she hails from Broward College out of Florida, where there's a slight temperature change for her here. We have tried to help her out a little bit by keeping her office temperature at 95 and periodically spritzing some water in there so it's a little moist. So we do appreciate her being here. And she's doing an excellent job in just a few days that she's been with us. Without going into any great information about Helena, we always invite you to come and spend some time with us and touring the campuses. We have finished up a lot of the remodel at the airport campus, and for those of you who would like to have a real treat in seeing some of the best practices that we believe that hail within the state of Montana and some of our technical programs, we'd always invite you to come out and take a look at that particular campus and see what we're doing. We have acquired some new aircraft that we're trying to keep out of President Engstrom's pocket. He's really kind of grown to like a few of the airplanes we have as a pilot, and we might even every once in a while give him an opportunity to fly that periodically. So welcome here to Helena, and we trust that you'll have a great meeting. Thank you.
Dean Bingham, thank you for having us. The burden of hosting this body it falls on you more routinely than most, and we appreciate your constant graciousness. And Mr. Parman is here from the Superintendent of Public Instruction Office. Lynette, please reflect that in the roll call. Thank you for joining us. And it sounds like you guys had a meeting yesterday that Sheila's excited about you possibly sharing some insight with. But Madam Commissioner?
Thank you. I would just like to welcome our colleague, Deputy Superintendent Dennis Parman. And Dennis I just want to remind everyone, I think a lot of you know, that he serves as chair of our board of the Montana Digital Academy. So I get to meet on a monthly basis with Dennis. He was vice chair of that board before Mr. Messenger left, doing a great job at that. And I also, yesterday, Clayton Christian and I had the opportunity, as my senior staff and I do about once every 6 weeks, to meet with the senior staff of the superintendent of public instruction. So yesterday, Denise, Juno, and Dennis, and Madeline Quinlan, and their senior staff, and we had one of our meetings, and we were fortunate that Clayton was able to be with us. But Dennis, I invite you to make a comment on how we work together and on the Digital Academy. If you choose, just at least quickly, I'm delighted to have you here and want to mention how great it is to work with the superintendent and her senior staff and how productive that is becoming for us in data collection and all kinds of ways.
Thank you, Commissioner Stearns. Real briefly, it's been an asset that is almost immeasurable to have our partnership with the university system, and particularly the University of Montana in regards to the Digital Academy. Having Commissioner Stearns on our board, she brings resources from the Commissioner's office to our meetings that provides experience and insight that, I mean, we're still fledgling in this business of online education, particularly in the K-12 arena. Our ongoing partnership with the Office of Public Instruction and the Commissioner's Office, I think, has laid the groundwork for us to do many things. The Digital Academy, as I mentioned in our meeting yesterday, we're the storefront for a great opportunity for dual enrollment for Montana's high school students into the university system. And if it weren't for these productive partnerships and relationships that we have, I don't think that we'd be anywhere near as far down the road as what we are today. And then our regular meetings have produced a great deal of fruit. We're always looking on the horizon, making sure that we know where our connections should be between our two agencies so that we're communicating constantly. And in the leadership of Commissioner Stearns and Superintendent Juneau, both of them are focused on all of public education in the state of Montana, from preschool all the way through postgraduate work, and we're trying to make sure that as seamlessly and effectively for the Montanas that we serve, that continues to occur. And we can't thank Commissioner Stearns enough for her leadership. Thank you.
Great update. Thanks for attending today, too. We appreciate it, and always learn a lot from you guys. Okay, in front of us is the consent agenda, and before we go into it, we thought we would not pull out, but draw out for a little bit of discussion. The first item, which relates to our recommendation that we hire Clay Christian as our next commissioner. In the recent weeks, as this has unfolded, a lot of chatter publicly has been rising in the papers and rising on the campuses, and a lot of good questions have been being asked, and we understand that as those that have been given the charge of creating public policy and making these decisions, that we not only owe it to those folks to answer those questions, but look forward to an opportunity to demonstrate that we believe not only have we protected the integrity of all processes, but that most importantly, we've operated in good faith with this process. And so as we talked about it as a board via some emails and some conversation leading into today's meeting, what we thought we would do is discuss it, talk a little bit about that process. And I thought I'd start with some personal perspective and just give some timeline, some background to what we've done. As you know, Commissioner Stearns last fall announced that she would be retiring. A whole different discussion that opens up a whole bunch of different emotions and thoughts. But it was made clear to us that that was her intent. And so we were posted at that date that we would need to be starting the process of looking for a new commissioner. At that time, we immediately contacted Kathy Swift, who's our legal counsel, and said, okay, what are procedures and what do we do? How do we do this? And found that there really is no set process in our bylaws. We as a board are free to choose whatever process that we'd like when we undertake this, which is much different than many of the processes that internally on campus exist and in different areas of government. But nonetheless, it is our bylaws that we have the right to create any process that we choose to do so. So immediately, the thing that we needed to discuss was what do we want to do? How do we want to start this? And forming a search committee was our first priority. Included in that search committee was every person that's sitting at this table, as well as the previous student regent was invited to join us because she had the opportunity to work with this board and with the existing commissioner, and with Joe's very recent appointment at that time, we felt that having a student's voice was imperative to the process and asked that she stay included, especially having had that board perspective, as this is ultimately a board decision. Much like every other search process that I've been a part of since I've watched here, whether we agreed with it or not in the past, this board made the decision we needed to seek outside counsel on how to proceed. We engaged a search consultant who immediately joined us in the process of starting to identify the priorities and the description of the type of person that we were going to be looking for. And under her guidance, and along with the guidance of of everybody on board, we agreed that the first thing we needed to do was solicit input. Find out what every member of the university system and members of the public that have an interest in this decision have to say about it. So every campus within our system, I believe every campus, if not every campus, at least every geographical foothold that we have in the campus, we scheduled listening sessions for specifically this discussion. We wanted to hear from every stakeholder. Internally, we wanted to hear from faculty and staff, students. Externally, we wanted to hear from local officials, local leaders. And the couple of those meetings that I was able to attend, I saw some of the greatest turnout that I've ever seen at our listening sessions. And I believe we got a tremendous amount of input to help us kind of shape that description that we were trying to put together. We had large participation, again, from both internal and external stakeholders. And as the search consultant was asked to do, did a great job of starting to compile what the stakeholders thought were the most important criteria for consideration with our search forward. From there, she spent some time one-on-one with each of us, asking us what our number one priorities and criteria were. And obviously in that meeting, I was speaking for myself. Everybody there was speaking for themselves. And a lot of things she immediately pointed out were not only consistent from my opinions and the public, or the public and some things that I was surfacing, but thoughts and ideas I had relative to ideas that other regents were having. So there was a lot of comfort as far as the board was sensing. We were pretty close. We kind of understood what we were thinking, what kind of criteria were most important. You've heard a lot of those statements in the paper. Somebody from Montana, all those things, but we're not talking about the decision. We're talking about how we got to it, the process today. At that point, the search consultant did her job, in my opinion. She sat there and saw some consistencies, saw some priorities that were strong enough on everyone's plate, and acted on some very specific suggestions from a couple of us to approach a potential candidate to see if there were an interest level. And that she did. And that was at that stage, as every other search process is a confidential matter between the search consultant and that candidate. So none of us were aware of that part, and that's the way the process was set up. We very much had a process to protect all of the things that we have protected in every other search that we've conducted. So when she perceived that there was potential interest, she then reported back to us as a search committee that there was a qualified candidate that needed to be discussed. And we found out that it was someone very close to the tent, someone that we all knew and trusted, and interestingly enough, had individually on at least a couple of bases from each of us suggested be the type of person that we go look for. Well, clearly, we recognize the potential for public perception and challenges there that we needed to think about. And I think it was only our second meeting as a search committee that we then as a group were pulled together to consider this and hear this. And we had to make the decision whether there was enough validity and perceived interest from both parties to proceed at that point, and we did. And the first thing that we did was say, well, if we're going to move this path, this person has to remove themselves from the process immediately. It cannot continue to go as a member of this discussion, of the search committee. That's exactly what we did. If my memory serves me right, we had one more search committee meeting where we met as a group. And in that meeting, after discussions where the search consultant had brought a lot of information to us individually, not as a quorum, not as a group, a lot of information related to her findings, kind of corroborating the match and the reason that we were encouraged to proceed this way, we made a couple of decisions in that meeting where we decided, one, we agree this is the direction we want to go. And the second part of that was, well, we've got to go see if the other party is as interested and willing to do it with us. At that point, we delegated the responsibility of initiating that conversation to a couple members of the board, and they took our message to the candidate, and in front of us today is the outcome of that discussion. Again, I want to pass the microphone and thoughts off to the other members of the board, and then certainly make ourselves available to every question that's in this room. I don't think in public policy anybody sitting at this table should expect that we agree on outcomes or decisions that are made. But I firmly believe and find great comfort with the people sitting at this table that the one thing we have to be expected to do is demonstrate that we're acting in good faith. that there was nothing other than the highest priority being the integrity of the system, because we cannot be effective with what we do if we cannot hold ourselves accountable to that expectation. I don't think any of us intend to be expected to have every decision we make be agreed with. We don't even agree among ourselves among every decision we make, and that's fair. But the process needs to hold its integrity. Like the discussion that we had here a minute ago with Dr. Engstrom, good faith has to be demonstrated. And I believe, and I will hold, and I'm excited to put my name on the effort that we've put here, because I firmly believe that was respected and honored by every person of this board. And know it's been creating a tremendous amount of buzz, and I think it's neat. What I really like is I hear that there's a lot of optimism about the outcome, a lot of existing trust and good reasons to move forward with the outcome. But again, it is well within the parameters of public policy that processes be questioned. I mean, how many times do we sit up here as a board and look back at the people in this room and question your processes? That's exactly what we do all the time. So it would be disingenuous of us not to allow the opportunity to come back at us when we make a decision that has allowed itself to pop up some questions. So that's my perspective. I would certainly hope that other regents and other people in the room might share their perspective as it relates to this process. Regent Barrett.
Thank you. And thank you. I think your summary of that was really excellent, and I think really hit all the high points. I'll just say, and I want to say, because it was, again, I can read the paper, so I know there's been pro and con discussions, and I just want to say how the position in which we found ourselves, I mean, we all, at some point in time or another, or most of us in our educational process, we're at catch-22, and that's where we found ourselves. That is, when it became apparent that Mr. Christian could be a potential candidate, we had two choices. We could depart from our longstanding policy that any candidate remains confidential during the process until they're identified, or we could have chosen to identify them and depart from that process. And we had discussed that with our search consultant, and the problem we found ourselves with was this. If we identified and then wanted to proceed with any kind of a search, in her judgment, we would have essentially mooted the search, that candidates from around the country would have seen we had a strong internal candidate. Many would not have applied, and we don't know, of course, what would happen. That was her judgment, that we would have found ourselves not having a meaningful search, but spending the money to have a search anyway and flying people in, and it would be a bit disingenuous. And when we balanced those two, we decided we would proceed, make a judgment that is proceed as a body, make a judgment if we want to continue with Mr. Christian as the candidate, and if so, do it, and if not, then we would end it and we would have a search, and we would not have that overhang. So we were caught between those thorns. We decided to essentially stick with the precedent which was long been established in candidate searches. In this circumstance, it certainly kind of torques the frame a little bit, but there wasn't a clear-cut alternative to those two, and so we then did proceed. And then when we decided that this was the path we wanted to follow, we did discuss it again with our search consultant about what would be the efficacy of continuing a search, and her advice was no, that it would be futile. And so long story short, we balanced all those things and made a decision. Now, people can agree or disagree, but I just want them to understand we did think and consider very carefully about what our process was going to be and made our best judgment in those circumstances. And I'm pleased with where we resulted.
Thanks, Regent Barrett. There's one part of this process I forgot. We did hold one more meeting as a quorum where we spent a tremendous amount of time as a board individually posting questions to this potential candidate as it related to concerns and ideas that we had about their preparedness, effectiveness, and capability of serving as chair. And as a member of OG staff pointed out to me today that was on that taking minutes, that was a great meeting in that we really changed the table with how we engaged the candidate with this potential decision, not only for that person, but for us, because as most search processes go. And I remember when we did the search process for President Cruzado, I was not on the search committee, but when the board was being recommended to move forward at that point, I know numerous of us contacted that candidate and had the same types of opportunities to have those questions. So I want to make sure I didn't forget that last component. Regent Barrett, great comments. Regent McLean.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan and Regent Barrett, for your great explanation of the process. It truly was an unconventional process, yet I think that we would all agree that it yielded an extraordinary result. And the students of our system, I think, will be the beneficiaries of that result. One of the themes that emerged as the listening sessions were played out across the campuses across Montana was that we want someone with a Montana voice, someone who understands the Montana political climate and the landscape of where we're at and where we've been. On the heels of the last legislative session, everyone knew that we needed someone who could move forward aggressively and do so right away so that we were ready for the 2013 session. And that played, I think, a tremendous role in ultimately choosing Clayton Christian for this position. In my 2 years on this board, I can tell you that in every constituency that I have seen or visited with in regards to the work that Mr. Christian has done, from our folks who work at the commissioner's offices, from our campus presidents and our chancellors and our community college leaders and tribal college leaders, our faculty and staff across the system, and most importantly, our students. Everyone that I've talked to has held him in the highest regard. He's an individual, I think, with conviction, and I think through his votes at the table and the conversations that he has away from the table that are always student-centered, have shown folks that he is true to his word. And finally, Mr. Christian, I think because of his life experiences at other board tables, demonstrated, I think, the remarkable ability, I think, to build consensus at this table and at every turn. And I think that our students will be the beneficiary of that consensus that he was able to build in his role as a board member and as his role as the chair of this board. And I think that we will see more consensus building in your role as commissioner of the Montana University system. I look forward to working with you and welcome you to this post.
Great comments. Thank you. Regent Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also wanted to mention, and thank you for that, the background of how we came to this decision, because I think it really helps explain our thought process. Because from the very beginning, it was when we considered this candidate, it became very obvious right away that it was extremely unconventional. And I, like all the other members of that search committee, were very thoughtful about that process, and I appreciated that discussion because we weighed the pros and cons of all of this. And for me, that was important because with any decision like this, and this is one of the biggest decisions I see that we'll have to make is the type of leadership that we'll have in the commissioner's office. So I just wanted to voice my opinion that that this was something that was very thoughtful in the process, yet critical when it needed to be. And I think that it was something that I certainly can stand behind. I support this candidate wholeheartedly, and I know that our representative and Mr. Christian will definitely represent the university system in a way that will reflect the importance of this position. So I just wanted to voice my own opinion about that and look forward to hearing from people. Thank you.
Regent Tuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As someone that came to this process a little later than everyone else, I simply want to echo what my colleague regents have said about this. And I'm pleased that this particular agenda item is on our agenda today, and would remind everybody that's listening or watching us today that Mr. Christian is also doing a tour of the various campuses of the university system. I know that he will be at our home campus at MSU Northern, I believe, next Tuesday. He's already had a couple of these meetings to talk about the priorities of faculty, staff, and students at every unit of the Montana University system. And I think that's a wonderful outreach effort on behalf of Mr. Christian. Thank you.
Thanks, Regent Tuss. Regent Teal.
I also came to this process a little later than the rest of everyone in my second month of being a regent, and this was also my first experience on a search committee. And not knowing Mr. Christian that well, I really wanted to, I put a great deal of thought into both how the process was run and the candidate that we were looking at. And as I learned more, I gained a lot of confidence in Clay's abilities. He has 2 students currently in the system, knows firsthand some of the problems of access and affordability that the system faces. He has incredible business experience, but more importantly, I think for me, he has what I perceive as a great knowledge and a great understanding of how business methods apply to higher education. So I attended Mr. Christian's listening session in Bozeman. I was very pleased to see the positive response, I think, that was felt at that listening session, and the great thought that Mr. Christian put into his answers. And I'm really excited to see what happens for the system now that we have this transition and that Mr. Christian is going to be moving forward in the commissioner's position.
Thanks, Regent Teal. Any other board discussion at this stage? All right, we'd open it up. Marvin, Professor Landsberg, we'd look forward to any questions or input you've got.
Never quite sure when it's my turn up here since I'm not on the board, but here I am. Just a couple quick comments, really. I think, I've appreciated hearing more explanation along the way of the process as it went on. So we see discussions in the paper about this, and I think I'd be remiss still if I didn't just say a couple things that I'm still hearing from faculty, and I understand the position you were under, and I want to be very clear in separating any comments I make right now. I'm commenting about process, not at all about outcome, which the outcome is sitting here at the table with us, and I think everybody can agree that outcome is a great one. But process-wise, I think even if the search was peculiar, it's a little peculiar to then be discussing that process in the midst of it after the fact almost. But I think faculty living in a world where hiring processes are much more prescribed and we're just more used to and comfortable with, inside that, more rules to follow. So again, I think you can understand why faculty might have wondered, well, how did this come to be? And I think it helps to understand. You didn't, in your bylaws, have specific guidelines to follow. So I don't think anybody's accusing the board of misaction there. And yet I still think that the one disappointment that faculty continue to express in all this, a couple is, national searches are the gold standard in sort of the stage that we play on, and to sort of forestall that, I personally now I think, and this is what I'm hearing, was unfortunate. Now, whether it would have been possible to operate under the constraints in any other fashion, it's not exactly clear to me. And yet, we're used to dealing with searches all the time where there are internal candidates where confidentiality is maintained. And so I think that's what will continue. I'm hearing sort of that expression still, that even with the same exact outcome, to have completed a national search would, I think, give even greater fast start to the authority of this position. But here we are, and it may be an opportunity for sometime in the future to discuss the bylaws there. You know, maybe there should be a few more guidelines in there. I don't know the answer to that one. Anyway.
Jen, please.
We have lovely mic issues, so let me get started a different way. Let me formally introduce myself. I was reminded that I did not the last time I approached. I apologize. My name is Jennifer Gursky, and while I represent the Montana Associated Students, my comments will be on behalf of the Associated Students of the University of Montana. Thank you for inviting public comment to this process, board, chair, and I'm not sure if I say commissioner or commissioners. It is good to be a Montanan. This morning we woke up to fresh and abundant white powder, and as we convene to discuss our higher education institutions, I am reminded of why I love being from Montana and have enjoyed the opportunity to study at the great institution of the University of Montana. My name is Jen, and I represent today the Associated Students of the University of Montana. It is for the love of our state, our people, and our higher institutions today that I speak to you today. As we are aware, Commissioner Stearns is retiring. I had the honor and pleasure of working with Commissioner Stearns during our last legislative session, advocating on behalf of students in our Montana University system. We advocated for accessible, affordable, and something that retained the utmost quality for our institution, and most of all for our students. The students of the University of Montana congratulate you, Sheila, on the next step in your journey. When Commissioner Stearns' retirement was announced, the Board of Regents stepped into action ready to ensure the Montana University system was in good hands. A consultant was hired, listening sessions ensued, and a national search was a priority on the agenda. Today, I'd like to make a few comments pertaining to the process of the search on behalf of our students. When a commissioner candidate had yet to be determined, I asked on behalf of students during the student and regent lunch at the November Board of Regents what the process for students to weigh into the decision was, as we currently, then in November, felt a bit out of the communication loop. I was assured the process would involve our student regent being in close communication as we vetted candidates and chose the right one for MUS. At this time, I understood the process might take months. I was also reminded that the listening sessions that happened in the early parts of our fall semester were students' opportunity to share their input pertaining to the commissioner search. While these listening sessions were particularly designed to field the community's concerns for MUS and its new leader, the process was not geared towards specific student input. The sessions were not held on campus, and when asked what opportunity students would have to take part, our student regent was our only conduit. While I understand the sensitivity and respect the confidentiality needed for ethical hiring practices, an opportunity for Montana students to become engaged stakeholders was not offered. During the listening session in Missoula, the chair of the Regents moderated the session. Fielding community input, and when asked again, the students' role in ensuring the right candidate was chosen as our leader, Vice President Edmonds was informed that this was our only opportunity. It was while I was at home for winter break, which our students are still on and return from on Monday, that I received an email that said the search had ceased and a commissioner was chosen. My concern lies in the process that was taken to get us here today. Let me be clear. My concern pertains only to the process and not the candidate. The students feel that as members of a system that espouses shared governance, that the participation students usually welcome in this system failed. While I don't think students are the only constituents that feel this way, I today speak only on behalf of students. There has been much media and public opinion sprinkled over this matter, so I will not belabor the point. But I do want the board to hear that students are disappointed that the shared and participatory form of governments that work so well in other areas was not felt. That said, Commissioner Christian, welcome. We welcome you to the position you hold today. You have been a strong advocate for us. You've been a strong advocate for accessibility, affordability, and a bulwark for quality. I appreciate your leadership and look forward to working with you as we fight and advocate together. I am excited that you were chosen as our leader and I know that our board and our system is in good hands. Students are lucky to have the leader that they have in you, and as our state moves forward in an economic and political climate that might not be as kind as it has been historically, I know that you are the right candidate. We, the students, look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Commissioner. We believe, my name is Mark O'Farrell. I'm with MEMFT. We represent all the faculty members in our union across the system. And MEMFT believes that the Regents did act in good faith. This was your process to develop. You developed it. We certainly understand the need for an employer to hire someone that fits their philosophy, that fits the Montana frame. We're excited about that. We support that, and it's raining in here. So I will keep it short. You did hire somebody that shares your values. In fact, you hired somebody we believe that shares our values. And we admired Mr. Christian's leadership on the board. We worked with him well as chair. I worked with him well as a board member before he became chair. He's always had an open door for us, always listened, and we appreciate that. We're supportive of the work you did in this search. We look forward to working with Commissioner Christian. I had the pleasure of lobbying with him in the legislature alongside Commissioner Stearns when he was chair. I think you will find that will be a seamless transition in the legislature. You have really, I think, a seasoned lobbyist coming forward. We look forward to working with you. Our office is always open, as well as I know yours is too. And so thanks to Commissioner Stearns for her hard work and for her openness and her relationship with us. Thank you for the board for the work that you do. Thank you. Good luck.
Any other comments floating around? Madam Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And I would just like to say, sometimes the historian in me cannot help but offering a reflection or two, and that is I have known, if not worked with, every commissioner since the Constitution in 1972 established this process. And it is interesting that national searches have been the exception, not the norm. Of the 8 that I can think of, and I may have been the 9th, so I may be missing someone, but at least 4 or 5 of those 8 or 9 were not chosen as a result of national searches. They were, by the board itself, promoted from being a deputy commissioner. There was one other search where the board interviewed a fine administrator from Carroll College who was present here in Helena and hired him to be the commissioner, again without a statewide process, and he was a wonderful commissioner. I was chosen as the result of a national search, but I do believe I had an edge, probably because I had Montana roots and Montana connections. So I just want, I guess, Montanans to realize that of the 8 or 9 commissioners, they have not historically been chosen with the same set of kind of national search process as is typical of campus searches. And so this is not as unusual, I think, this process as many people think it is. It's actually quite typical of the process over the years that has been followed. And if anyone ever wants to explore that with me, I kind of know it from memory. I lived through it. Thanks.
Thanks, Madam Commissioner. President Engstrom.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, process aside, I just want to express on behalf of the UM affiliation how appreciative we are of the final outcome of this search. I can't envision finding someone more dedicated to open communication and more knowledgeable about the Montana University system and the lay of the land in Montana as Mr. Christian. I've truly enjoyed working with him in his previous role as chair of the board and look forward very much to working with him in this next role. I know that he'll uphold the strong traditions of excellence that we have enjoyed under Commissioner Stearns for these past years. We are so fortunate to have both of these individuals speaking for us on behalf of higher education in the state of Montana and open to our input along the way. So thank you both for your past performance, Sheila, and for your future performance, Commissioner Christian.
Thanks, President Engstrom. President Cruzado.
Sure, I too want to add my voice to recognize and celebrate Commissioner Stearns' outstanding contributions to the Montana University system. It was Commissioner Stearns who brought me here, and I have enjoyed every minute of the last 2 years serving as president of Montana State University and working shoulder to shoulder with our wonderful Board of Regents. I'm convinced that everything that we do in the university setting provide us with an opportunity to have a teachable moment. And searches are not an exception. And I just think that we need to welcome the comments that we have received today also from students and faculty. I think that we all hear the message. We are all invited to build an even stronger and better Montana University system. That's the message that we received and that we welcome. And I'm just here to say that Commissioner Christian, every campus of the Montana State University is standing ready to assist you. Our faculty are ready to provide the guidance and advice that you need. Our students are excited and ready to work with you, and so is our staff. So welcome. Happy to have you here, and happy to have a Bobcat in your family in our campus. Thank you.
Any other comments? I think one thing I want to point out real quick, and then we'll get back to an entire consent agenda. We're talking about an outcome as if this is done. We're just getting started. And whether or not Commissioner Christian is successful is going to rely on how committed we are in supporting him and the initiatives that fall under his agenda as commissioner. As I feel very confident with the decisions that we've made, you've made, as far as the hires that we've had the opportunity to work with, that we've demonstrated that we can do that. But we are by no means done at making the right decision here. We've got to make it the right decision by providing the support to Commissioner Christian in order to do that. Thank you very much for your comments. So, Regent Barrett. It's been moved to accept consent items A through J. Any desire by any board members to pull any of them? Seeing none, any discussion related to any items? Any further public comment related to any of the items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, it's been moved. All of those in favor of passing the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes, item A through J. With that, I think we should take a break, but not before we welcome Commissioner Christian as an employee of the system. Reconvene at 10 after 2. Before we get into the action items, we're going to get a brief report from Chancellor Blackketter of an issue on his campus. And, Chancellor Blackketter.
Thank you very much, Regent Buchanan, Board of Regents, Commissioners Stearns and Christian, and President Engstrom. Thank you for this opportunity. As most of you are aware, we had an incident on the Montana Tech campus in which we had transcript alterations. They were in 3 categories. Grade changes, really 2 categories. Grades changed from failing grades to passing grades or improvements to grades. We had courses removed from transcripts. Those included both withdrawals, W's if you will, and we also had some courses that were added to transcripts. And that was all available in the press release I was it has fallen off my iPod right now, but 124 grade changes, 119 courses removed, and 19 courses added, as well as reported, with 36 students involved. Much like the discussion previously, we have been very careful, and I will continue to be very careful with Montana and federal law that prohibits any release of student documentation, academic or otherwise. And the same is generally true in regard to employee or records as well with it. But I would like to say a couple of things with regard to the incident that I think is really important for people to bring out. Just a little bit of background on how it was discovered and what we've done about it, and the assurance that we have really basically completed our investigation to it and feel very confident that we have found all of the transgressions that have occurred on the transcripts. In October, we had a case where we had a grade changed on a transcript from a W to a passing grade, and then transcripts printed, and then the grade changed back. And that sort of cued us in that there was some transgressions within our system in terms of alterations on transcripts that were inappropriate. Most of the time, you find incidences like this, and it's just it's an incompetency issue, perhaps more so than a deliberate change of a transcript. Grade changes occur on a fairly regular basis at the end of the semester if faculty have made mistakes. But as we investigated this alteration of the transcript, we found some other discrepancies that included grade changes. And the banner system, the data information system that we have on our campus, like we have on most campuses, is a very thorough system. So we ran audits. I won't say that we did it in this particular order, but over time as we began this investigation, we went clear back to 2005 to look at all the grade changes. It turns out to be a very large stack in very small print. And you start to look at the correctness of those grade changes, and it comes down to having documentation, which involves having a form that is signed by a faculty member that there's a grade change occurring, and then that form is then scanned into a system called Knowledge, spelled N-O-L-I-J, oddly enough. But anyway, and you can look at that, and as you go through that list and you reduce it down to the incidences of grade changes don't have proper documentation, it comes down to a very small pile, and that's where we began our investigation, so that you start looking at each case in which there isn't the proper documentation, and some clear patterns emerged. Patterns that large number of grade changes occurring on particular days, and large number of grade changes occurring for particular students. So there are some very clear indicators of some events that happen that are unusual in the system. Certainly courses that are added post the semester. For example, a course was added in the fall of 2011 for a course that was taken, quote unquote, in 2010 and given a grade on the same day. It's an amazing student. And not to make too much light of it, but there are some really clear indicators. And I only tell you this to let you know that we have basically completed our investigation. We feel very confident that we have found all the transgressions. They were an isolated case with a single individual with a number of students. We have many of those students have chosen not to return to Montana Tech, as was stated in the press release. We are going through a process with our Academic Standards Committee to deal with the other students. We are taking precautions within our systems, including using these same audits as triggers so that we can find inappropriate or at least patterns that might signify at least something inappropriate has been done, even if it's just that we don't have the proper documentation in the form so that we can go back and collect that to make sure that it's correct. We are confident in that. We are also, with this audit processing, making multiple people responsible for reviewing the audit process to make sure that these changes were done. We are correcting transcripts and have been notifying students of these changes as we work on an individual basis for each student through the Academic Standards Committee. And I'm going to leave it at that. Are there any questions from the Board of Regents or from any others? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Chancellor Blackketter, I I also appreciated speaking with you during the break here and wanted to point out I was, it's unfortunate again with this incident, but it's always an opportunity to learn how our system can be improved. And I want to hear what you might have in mind as you're looking at the procedure that you do with foreign students in order to make them aware of the policies and the procedures on the campus, and if there's any opportunity here to enhance that.
Thank you, Regent Robinson. I want to be real clear that we have done our audits on all students for the entire time frame. With all of our students, it's important that we help them understand the academic integrity standards that we expect at the university. Each student comes from a different culture, and as we try to work with those students to help them understand what the standards are that we have so that they understand them. And as a longtime professor, I've always said that just because a student's head is going up and down doesn't necessarily mean that they understand what you're saying, just as it is with all of us in our conversation. And as we deal with each other, it's important that we clearly articulate those standards. We are reviewing those standards with the Associated Students of Montana Tech, and we are going to hold an all-campus meeting here next Thursday to talk about those standards, which include disclosure of student information and making sure that records are kept appropriately for not just for the students' sake, but for the faculty and staff's sake. It's something that we needed to be reminded of, obviously, although it was an isolated case. The integrity of our institution is at stake. I think that we have established that we are going to take action on those kinds of things and will not tolerate academic dishonesty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Blackketter. I just want to thank you for the excellent exercise of professional discretion that you and Dr. Abbott and everybody who is addressing this on your campus has exercised and displayed. We appreciate it very much, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Regent McLean, and just a brief opportunity to thank the staff that have worked on this. I have to tell you that literally hundreds of hours were spent beyond normal hours. In fact, we had a couple of days where we had people there on a 24-hour basis looking at this just to make sure we were correct, moving very cautiously. I would also like to state publicly, and of course, President Engstrom and Commissioner Stearns, they know that we have been in contact as soon as we found out about it and have been working to make sure that we are open and transparent about it. But thank you, Regent McLean.
Thank you. Your closing thoughts were what I think you hear this board saying, that the integrity of the institution is what's at stake here, and we just have to have an approach that does not tolerate anything that jeopardizes that. And we thank you for the actions you've taken. Thanks so much.
And Regent Buchanan, I do want to say that much like President Engstrom reiterated about the University of Montana, Missoula, we have great students.
Right.
And students who are working very hard for what they do. And we have professors, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but these people are working hard and they're doing the right thing. And I just want to emphasize that the integrity of our faculty and our students should not be compromised by a single or a few people, because the vast, vast majority of our students and faculty are incredibly dedicated to Montana and to Montana Tech. Thank you.
We're thankful that you're in charge of this issue. Thank you.
Since discussion on that seems to have closed, I would just like to take this opportunity, if you'll indulge me for a moment while Chancellor Blackketter is still standing, to thank him on behalf of about 90 Anaconda High School seniors for bringing his wife. He joined us, Dr. Abbott, the deans of both of the colleges there, and Amy Verlanik, Gal from Enrollment Services. I think that about covers it. To our high school yesterday to address our seniors about graduation matters. And each of them gave a short little speech, and they were all inspirational in nature. And I think that they touched the hearts of all of our seniors. And we appreciate you coming and the energy that you displayed and the great conversation that you led. Thank you very much. I think it's important for this board to know that the good work is being done in so many different ways, and we appreciate it from Anaconda High School.
On to action item A in the action agenda. U of M Missoula, President Engstrom. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we bring before you an action item to get approval to install stadium lights in Washington Grizzly Stadium. I think the item is self-explanatory. It will be about a $1 million project funded through intercap loan, and the interest or the payments on that intercap loan paid out of athletic designated funds. This will allow us to not only hold games in the dark hours, but it will allow us to extend and be more versatile with our practice sessions as well. We've actually run into the situation where many of our student athletes have afternoon labs and courses, and so it makes it difficult for practice. And so by having stadium lights, that will extend that. So we request your approval, and we anticipate then having the lights installed sometime next spring, perhaps in time for some scrimmage games. And I will only say that we hope that our lights are as bright as the lights at Montana State University. I want you to know, when I was there, President Cruzado, I was counting the light bulbs and making sure that we install at least that many light bulbs in ours. So thank you.
Any comments or questions on this item? Regent Barrett?
Well, I just had to say, I was glad to see that we're eliminating the lighting gap that existed between the two, and that we may be the end of that part of the Cold War.
So I just wanted to ask one question, which I think is something that's just good to ask on these type of projects, which is, are student fees going to be used directly for the payment of the loan, or are they pledged towards the loan repayment?
Regent Teal, members of the board, thank you. No student fees will be used in the repayment of this loan.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I move that item.
Any public discussion or comments from other members of the body? Any public comments? Seeing none, has been moved to move action item A forward. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item B, Madam President, Energy Performance Contract at Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. President Armstrong, welcome to the light side. This item, the board has seen in several locations, and we are happy to report that we are making great progress with a wonderful team that we have put together at the MSU Bozeman campus in order to fulfill the expectation of our energy performance contract. And for more detailed information, I would like to ask Terry Least if he can join us at the podium and provide more details.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. For the record, my name is Terry Least. I'm the Interim Vice President for Administration and Finance at Montana State University. We've had this discussion before about the energy performance contracts. It was a little over a year ago, last fall, we entered into a contract with for an energy audit, and that energy audit is now complete. It covered about 2 million square feet on campus, including our sub and student health center, the student fitness center, field house, about 10 residence halls, and about 80 family and graduate housing units. That audit produced about 150 energy savings opportunities with a total cost of about $35 million. So after numerous discussions with the board, we are here today to ask for authority to execute an energy performance contract for about 50 projects to the tune of $9.1 million. Of that $9.1 million, about half of that will be funded through auxiliaries, R&R funds. These will be for many student safety issues. We have a lot of windows that we can no longer get parts for replacement and things like that. A lot of items in that category, but that still have energy savings components to them. So we will not be borrowing funds for those items. The higher savings opportunities from the energy standpoint, the other half, roughly 4.6 million of this 9.1 million total, will be funded through Board of Investment loans and be repaid within a 15-year time period. The savings that we expect annually is at least $370,000. That's guaranteed, and that's more than enough than we need for the bond repayment, or I'm sorry, the loan repayment through the Board of Investments. Again, those student fees or tuition, to Regent Teal's question, will be used for this project. Work would begin this spring and would be wrapped up a year from September. So September of 2013, we would expect all of this work to be done. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Regent Tuss.
President Cruzado, what an awesome project. $9.1 million worth of energy retrofits being paid off in 11.7 years. And $371,000 is your annualized savings because of that energy savings, right?
That's correct.
I mean, it just seems to me like we should be doing this all over the system. I mean, this is a wonderful project, and I applaud this effort. And I don't know if other campuses are doing this or if you're doing this in other locations at MSU. But I looked at this as a fairly mundane item to begin with, and I kind of got excited when I looked at the financing for this. There's no reason in the world why we shouldn't be doing this all over the place.
Thank you very much, Regent Tuss and Mr. Chair and members of the board. I also need to say that a lot of the credit about this project goes to our students. They are very committed to environmental issues. They are committed to make of MSU, and not only this campus, I think every campus, and I would dare to say in the Montana University system, we have very conscientious students who are leading the way, who are showing us this is the pathway towards a greener, healthier campus. And when you combine that with staff who are very committed to what we are trying to do, and with a Board of Regents that's visionary, then this is the outcome. We're also very pleased that we were able to find a great partner in McKinstry, and representatives from the company are with us this afternoon in case you had any other questions. But the students are really the ones who need to be commended on this one.
I just want to reiterate that from some personal experience with several students that I know working through NICO and the ASMSU Sustainability Center who have worked on advocating for this type of project all over campus and really got into the nitty-gritty details of what does an energy audit mean, what sort of savings can we expect, what are the mundane details of the financing, and how does this work? And they did some great advocacy, some great outreach to answer questions that were brought forward by faculty, by staff, and also worked very closely with auxiliaries and facilities, I know, to bring this project together. So I think it's been a great example not only of a project for energy conservation, but a great example of bottom-up building processes and building input from students, faculty, staff, and all over Montana State University. So congratulations.
I too would like to thank you for your efforts in bringing this forward, and I'd like to thank you for your responsiveness over the last year in answering all of our questions and making sure we got the answers, and your persistence in making sure that this came back. I appreciate that. Some of you may remember I asked the question of McKinstry regarding contractors and wanted an assurance that they would be local or state contractors, and I think I had my answer about a week ago when I saw a project that they had done in Butte and a great ad in the paper alongside that ad, a list of all of the local contractors that they had used, so a boon to the local economy. And so my question there has been answered, and I congratulate you on moving forward.
Thanks, Regent McLean. Any other comments from Regents? Was there a motion to move forward item B? So moved. Any discussion from members of the body? Any discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved forward that item B pass. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Item passes. On to the information item. I believe this will be Deputy Commissioner Seck. and College Now update. John.
Summer is loading the PowerPoint. While she's doing that, I'll just share a couple of comments. Yesterday,
I have a question. Do you want Chancellor Grothis to join you here shortly, or? Thank you.
we thought we would expedite it. The two-year leaders of Montana and I met yesterday for a retreat, and we were very pleased to have Commissioner Stearns and Commissioner-elect Christian with us. And in Commissioner Stearns' opening comments, she made what I thought was a very profound statement. And she referenced Rosa Parks and the fact that she sat in the front of the bus and what happened as a result of that. It was, Commissioner Stearns noted, that was not only a time for change, but it created a shift in the universe. And I think that analogy really served to represent what's happening in two-year education and what's happened in two-year education under Commissioner Stearns' watch, in that it has metaphorically moved to the front of the bus and has changed the universe of higher education in Montana. Very grateful to Commissioner Stearns for what she has done over the past 10 years with two-year education. A big piece of what we did during our retreat yesterday was each of the 5 COTs presented their comprehensive mission plans. And as you know, the colleges have been working on this for the past several months. I'm very pleased to have been working with my co-chair, Chancellor Groseth, on this effort. And the work that has taken place, which began last June and has continued through this fall, has resulted in some very significant efforts underway at each of the 5 colleges of technology. As you know, and as I mentioned previously, began with the October listening sessions, continued with our November retreat at the University of Montana campus, and then continued at the summit, which I'll talk about in a few moments on the MSU campus. We asked each of the 5 COTs to submit their comprehensive mission expansion plans by December 9th as a first draft, just as a first read, and then they had actually until last Monday to submit the second draft of their comprehensive plans. The drafts are represented a great deal of work that has taken place in each of the 5 campuses. Each of the deans presented their plans. They had opportunities for question and answer from the fellow two-year leaders across the state. We're very pleased to have representation from our 3 community college presidents at the meeting, who played a huge role in offering advice and critiques to help each of the colleges of technology with the comprehensive mission expansion, as well as advice from each other. Now that we have a first draft, which has been placed on the website for each of you to look at, the final plans, the final drafts will be presented to you at the March 1st and 2nd board meeting. Those plans will be due to me by February 15th. And we talked about in our meeting yesterday that by the time we receive the final plans on February 15th, that there's really an expectation that each of those plans will have been reviewed and approved by their appropriate chancellor or president, and that they will be integrated into the campus and university strategic planning and priority process. That this is a major effort that will continue for years to come. We also talked about at the May Board of Regents meeting having each of the 5 colleges of technology come back by adding benchmarks and timelines and investment needs for the planning process. And Also, I think there was considerable belief among everyone participating in the retreat yesterday, along with Commissioner Stearns and Commissioner Christian, the expectation of regular progress updates at future board meetings. This is not going to be a slow process. It's an evolutionary process. Just to give you, this is on the agenda item, but I'll just give you a brief update now. We, as this board consented back in November to also add Gallatin College programs, Bitterroot College program, and 2-year programs at Northern and Western to the process. We are working with each of those to establish a baseline analysis of where they are with respect to the comprehensive mission, much like we did with the COTs back in August and September. And I'm also working to meet with each of the leaders of those units and their university supervisors to determine where they fit, where each of them fit with respect to the comprehensive mission expansion process. President Cruzado invited me to participate in her retreat a couple of weeks ago. We had a great conversation and discussion, and I'm looking at continuing those discussions. Significant work is underway, and I can't underemphasize the work that each of the 5 colleges of technology have been doing and the work that they've put into this effort. I think it's very representative of excellent work taking place among their faculty, staff, and with their university leadership. There's significant community interest in this, and I pulled this, and Chancellor Gross had suggested including this in the slide because the Billings Gazette editorial board identified this initiative as one of their top priorities for 2012 to watch. And the Gazette is just one example. As a result of this work over the past several months and the great work of Strategies 360, we've had almost 30 news articles across Montana. So there's a lot of interest in this work as we go forward. And the driving force of this is mission expansion. Mission expansion drives everything. So we're working through the challenges. We appreciate the community college leadership, folks like President Hickswa, President Karras, and President Cargill, who've been working with us to help us. And I also appreciate the incredible work of the 5 COT deans and the great leadership of folks like Dean Bingham, who really was a huge help yesterday in our meeting. These plans are living documents, and so we'll keep you posted.
It's exciting. It's been exciting since its creation. Questions or thoughts? Regent McLean.
Thank you, Dr. Seck. And when you talked about how this isn't a slow process, it's an evolutionary process, I wanted to tell you that nothing about the work that you've done with College Now has been slow. You have moved it quickly and to the benefit of our students, and I thank you for that. As I prepared for the meeting today, we've had a lot of budget discussions, and system-wide initiatives have been at the forefront of those discussions, something that we're doing system-wide. And as I looked through the missions for each of the schools, one of the things stood out, and I'm really glad that Mr. Parman is here, and I see Sylvia here, and I'm glad. As I looked, one of the things stood out, and it talked about the adult basic education component, which are carried out through our local school districts and our GEDs, and they were discussed from this perspective. And I guess I'm just wondering if there have been any systems-wide discussions historically about bringing these the COT efforts to our high school campuses. We're providing the adult basic ed in our district campuses, our K-12 district campuses, and I'm just wondering if this is an opportunity for collaboration, sharing some of those adult basic education resources that come to our K-12 districts, and where the conversation is in that regard.
You bet. Mr. Chair, Regent McLean, we've had a lot of conversation about that. In fact, Margaret Bowles, who is the State Director for Adult Basic Education, GED, serves as one of our co-chairs for the College Now subcommittee working on this. And so we've been working very closely not only with Margaret, but also with Assistant Superintendent Steve York and with the leaders of the COTs across the state. And we have some great examples of partnerships already underway, places like MSU Billings COT and MSU Great Falls COT, and Dean Bingham here at Helena COT is working on some amazing partnerships with Helena Public Schools that frankly could potentially serve as a prototype for other work to come in the state. So there's a lot of work going on with that, and we really appreciate the collaborative nature of our work with OPI that continues on a regular basis.
I appreciate that too, and I thank you, and I think it would be to the benefit of all of our students, regardless of where they are located, to make it a systems-wide program effort. Thank you for the great work that you've already done.
Regent Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Commissioner Seck, thank you for the report today and the update, and I too appreciate having been involved with some of the meetings and discussions, especially with the Lumina Foundation, how important this initiative is, and how well you've taken care of that and moving it forward, giving people time to participate in the process, but also keeping things moving forward. I look forward to hearing more about this. When I heard of the summit, the two-year college summit in Bozeman, again, I thought that was a great effort to bring all of these diverse two-year institutions together. Here in Montana, as you've explained very well, it's very unique here in Montana, all of the different campuses that need to be involved in this discussion. So it's not an easy task at all. At that summit, I did read of some of the outcomes of that and appreciated you sending us information. Along with that diversity in Montana, as we're aware too, that there are 7 tribal colleges, most of them 2-year, and that they're included in that. And it sounded like you had pretty good participation there from the tribal college campuses and the leadership there. I was wondering what type of input they had, understanding that they're not within our purview, that we don't oversee what they do, that they're independent, unique tribal colleges. But I was curious about their participation and how that went.
Right. Mr. Chair, Regent Robinson, very good question. And we are very pleased to have tribal college participation in the summit. And they were full participants in the entire 2 days of the summit and did participate very well in the focus group or discussion groups, and were very helpful. And in our retreat yesterday with the 2-year leaders, as we were prioritizing our goals for this academic year, really expanding our outreach and engagement with each of the 7 tribal colleges was a very important goal that we identified yesterday, and agree that it's something that we want to continue to build on and really even further engage them in the process, because like our 3 comprehensive community colleges in the state, they too have a great deal of expertise that they can lend and assist with this great effort.
Great. Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Any comments or thoughts from other folks in the group? Deputy Commissioner Seck, great. Keep up this is, as Regent McLean put, this has been a fast-moving, evolving, and exciting project. We're excited to see, even by May and March of this year, all the new things that you'll be bringing in front of us. Thank you for your great report. On to item, still your platform, right?
Let's see, I think we had a brief update on the summit, or do you?
Yeah, I think we have time for it. We got caught up a tad bit. A brief update would be great.
In fact, I'll skip the PowerPoint in interest of time, Summer, for the summit, and just mention that just to follow up on Regent Robinson's update, we had 107 people participate in the summit, and excellent participation. And I believe what we did and what we accomplished through the summit really set the framework for the work yet to come. And we are continuing by conducting additional research with prospective students and current students in the communities where we have colleges of technology, and we're also adding Gallatin College programs. And so when we come back to you in March, we'll bring to you the results of that research. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Deputy Commissioner Sack. Great reports all the way around. President Engstrom, item B, Bitterroot College program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. If I could ask Provost Brown just to make some very brief comments. There are several members of the board who have come on since the Bitterroot College program was put in place, and this is such a success story that I want him to just say a few words, if he would, please.
Chairman Buchanan, members of the board, and commissioners squared. My name is Perry Brown. I'm the provost of the University of Montana. I just want to give you a brief update on a few things that are going on with regard to the Bitterroot College program. The information item that you have in your packet has to do with an expansion of the facility that we use in Hamilton, Montana at the Ravalli County Entrepreneurship Center. And we found it absolutely necessary to move from the 800 square feet that we leased from the center to now 4,200 square feet that we leased from the center, because there was no way to accommodate the activities of the program without making that major change. Part of the reason for that, as I say, the program is expanded, and the handout that I've just given all of you on the one side where there are two graphs, and then we'll go to the one with 4 on it, but the one with the 2 graphs on it, the top one is the independent consultant's estimate of how the program would grow to the year 2025. And I can tell you, even though we're at the very, very left-hand side of that graph, we are clearly on target, and the consultant made a pretty good estimate, because the consultant estimated that by the fall of by the spring of 2000 or the fall of 2011, we would be at somewhere around 191 head count, and we were at 199. So we just slightly exceeded that, and we slightly exceeded the FTE also generated at the college. So the growth at the bottom right of that handout, the growth is shown there for both those things, and you can see the 199 and then the 89.5 FTE and the number of sections that we have offered in terms of individual courses there. The reason it flattens off to for spring of 2012 is very simple. We're still in registration, and so that will grow up, because we have actually gone from, to what we had gone to a week ago. We'd gone from 199 to 200, but we're still in registration, and there are more students that will sign up. So the program continues to grow. If you go to the back side of that particular handout, you'll see that the majority of the students at the college are women, that approximately half of them come from the city of Hamilton, but that is the largest city within the county, that many of the students are only taking a partial load. They are part-time students within the program, and that in age, most of the students, the bulk of the students, are between 20 and 44 years old. So we have a somewhat older than average population at the college there. So that's just some quick statistics, and with that tremendous growth that you can see in those graphs is the reason we needed to add some space. We just couldn't do the things that needed to be done for Ravalli County without adding space, and that's why that item that we brought to you as an information item. 2 other things I'd like to do in just quick summary of where we are. We have a nearly completed draft now of a strategic plan for the Bitterroot College program. As soon as President Engstrom and I have had time to converse about this and make sure this is what we want to endorse, we will bring this to the board and share this with you. But we're very, very close, and the BCP steering committee, a subcommittee of that, is responsible for putting this together, and involved people from the community, students from the BCP program, administrators, faculty, a group of people that were involved in that planning effort. The last thing I'd like to do is read a letter to you, if I can indulge you for just a couple more minutes, from John Robinson, who until just recently was the chair of the Bitterroot College Program Steering Committee. And he resigned recently simply because he said we're moving from a steering committee to an advisory board now with the new plan, and he felt it was time for new leadership and new things to happen. But he gave us some reflections that I'd just like to share with you. And these reflections, I think, are indicative of what's happening in Ravalli County with regard to this program. The first part of it is a little bit of his own musing, and then we'll get into the substance of it. He says, I arose Saturday morning, and after building the fire, making the coffee, waiting for my wife's muffins to come out of the oven, I turned in C-SPAN and caught an interview of David Brooks. David is one of my favorite personalities on television. I really admire his centrist stance on the politics and problems of the world. This interview was a rerun. I had seen the last half of the interview a week ago. This time, I got in right at the beginning. It was very interesting. I'm not sure what about this interview caused me to have a metamorphosis, but I had one, and I am glad I did. About 5 years ago, I became involved in attempting to establish a community college in the Bitterroot Valley. The group believed that we should have higher education in the valley. It was the start of a long and arduous journey that ultimately led us to defeat in the Montana legislature. It is disheartening to engage in a noble cause over a 2-year period and end up with the rug pulled out from under your efforts, noble as they may have been. Right after our efforts were defeated, the opposition came to us and asked our group to join them in a different effort to bring higher education to the Bitterroot Valley. I gnawed at the bone I thought they were throwing us with very long teeth. After a few meetings, my teeth grew shorter and I found more meat on the bone. With the great help and assistance of people who formerly opposed us, we started a college of higher learning in the valley. It not only started, it roared into existence. It was not a community college. It was a 2-year institution under the mantle of the University of Montana. It was not the community college of my dreams, but it was providing affordable higher education to the people of the Bitterroot Valley. Success in education is measured in numbers, and our numbers were multiplying by a factor of 2 every 4 months. With the guidance and financial assistance of the University of Montana, the strong support of Royce Engstrom, president of the U of M, and Perry Brown, U of M provost, the Bitterroot Valley now has a facility capable of offering 2-year associate degrees. The Bitterroot College program of the University of Montana can also provide certificate education for several work-related courses at a reasonable cost. A community college would operate under different circumstances, and I hung on to my original dream of a locally controlled community college until this Saturday morning, December 10th, 2011. While watching David Brooks being interviewed on television, I had a kink in my brain. I realized our community college group did not have the power and would probably never be in a position to establish a community college in the Bitterroot. I re-examined our goal. It was to bring higher education to the Bitterroot Valley. We have accomplished that task. The college is growing beyond our expectations. The director of the college, Victoria Clark, and her assistant, Kathleen O'Leary, have performed a miracle. I don't know of another college where the potential students are made to feel more comfortable and welcome about sharing their college career. I stop in the college frequently. As an old coach, I have an eye for motivated players. These students are highly motivated. The new facility with its more expansive accommodations will provide the students space so they can be more easily motivated. Facilities for individual study are now available. They won't have to sit on the floor in the hall with a long extension cord to work on their computers. More courses will be offered, and the students' horizon of learning will be expanded greatly. The embers that burned inside me to have a community college are extinguished. We have a college under the direction of the U of M, and we are going to make it a great addition to the U of M. I put on my magician's hat to look into the future for the college, and I see more than 1,000 students by 2015. I see the vapor trail of those students who have passed through our portals, lighting the way for better things in Montana. Though I have withdrawn from active participation due to personal reasons, I will continue to do all I can to assist in the continued success of the Bitterroot College program of the University of Montana. Thank you for allowing me to contribute my little bit to the success of the college. We have made it happen in the Bitterroot Valley. John W. Robinson. I can tell you what John went through in our interaction, and I'm sure President Engstrom can share the same thing with you. This was a person who really did see us as the opposition, and it's a person who has made a complete conversion to the fact that something is really working with the help of the Montana University system. And so we're very proud of that, and I wanted just to bring you this little chart to show you the update on how the statistics are moving. It's not about statistics, it's about those lives that are being changed. I've talked to students at that college, mothers in their 40s and 50s with kids at home that never thought they could go to college, and they are now. Some of them are transferring to Missoula because they have completed 2 years at the Bitterroot College program. We have workers in that community or in those communities there that either were underemployed or were laid off, that decided that after 20 years doing something else, they better get back in college, get some more education, and they found their opportunity. And we have now a growing number of young students, graduates right out of high school, that have decided this is the place to start their higher education. This is a success that you created, and we were able to help you do that. And the community has responded by opening their arms and really helping us, embrace the idea that maybe they didn't get a community college, but they got higher education in the Bitterroot, and they're better off and happy for it. So I thank you for this time just to share that with you.
I think you're capturing my sense of this very well. I mean, I remember how contentious and antagonistic that whole process felt when we were going through it. And instead of us feeling like we won because we were able to deny, we knew we had not won. We knew we had to step up and find a way to answer that. And I applaud what you guys have been doing. It's outstanding. It feels like we've started another great energy there in the Bitterroot. Thanks, Provost Brown. Regent McLean.
Thank you. I was not a part of the board, but I do remember the controversy surrounding this, and I want to thank you, Dr. Brown, and you, Dr. Engstrom, for your leadership in helping a community, helping folks to think differently about the delivery of education. And now we have 40-year-old moms going back to school and thinking differently, and we celebrate this. And if you would please extend my thank you to him for serving on the steering committee and for all of his efforts in making it happen. It doesn't happen without good folks in the boots on the ground. So thank you, and thank you for your leadership in making it happen.
Thank you, Regent McLean.
Regent Barrett.
First, I think you said that very well. I remember this issue quite a bit, and when we reached a decision, which really was financial and structural, that they couldn't do a community college, we didn't feel like we won. I mean, that was clear. There's a whole body that's in favor of higher education. I have one question. One of the more compelling pieces of testimony we had during that hearing were a few students from, I'm not sure I can put the right word on it, but there's sort of a work camp or a training thing for juveniles somewhere in the valley, and they were really anxious to have an opportunity, and that was one of the things that really made it difficult, to look at the numbers and say this isn't going to work, and yet leave them out in the cold. Do you have any sense of what type of, I don't remember the name of that entity, but one of you probably does, but any sense of the participation you might be getting there?
It
was like a
Regent Barrett. It's Trapper Creek Job Corps Center.
Yes, that was it.
And they have been working with us. I can't tell you about particular numbers that may have come from there that may be involved. I don't know, and I'm not even sure if we've kept track of that. But we know that some people that have graduated from that program have moved on into working with us in higher education in Ravalli County, but I can't give you the exact numbers.
Well, if there's any opportunity for outreach with Trapper Creek, I hope we can do it. I remember the testimony very well about that. It was very compelling from those young people.
Any other comments or thoughts on this item? Please, Marvin. Professor Landsberg.
I was at some of those meetings too. I've been around long enough to watch that, and as not a member of the board, but I would also like to just congratulate you in the way you worked through that whole that whole discussion. That one was an education to watch, and I think in the outcome is just one that shows that boards like this and your participation on it is very important for state processes. So congratulations from me on that too.
Commissioner Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thank you, Marvin. But I would like to say that I'm sure Victoria Clark is listening, even if John Robinson is not. And there are also still advocates for community colleges and critics of our approach who are listening and with whom I continue to try and stay in close contact. What we have been about, I hope everyone saw the connection between Deputy Commissioner John Seck's report and thought back to Mary Moe's great work, and what we are talking about today is keeping promises. The promise that this board, that Mary Moe and I, President Dennison, Provost Engstrom made to a group of people, that we would keep this promise and we would deliver with as high a quality and as great a commitment as we could. So keeping promises, and then the other part of it, John Seck's report, that we would work not just with the Bitterroot, but with the Gallatin and other areas so that we could break new ground. We could test the proposition. Can you really develop a system within a system, a two-year college system, in which we can deliver the community college mission across the state without expanding a large administration interface with all the expenses of new accreditations and so forth? That proposition is still being tested. This is an example that seems to be working and is probably Exhibit A, that we can probably keep the promise and make it work and save the people of the state of Montana and communities a lot of expense through the work of John Seck and all of us, of this board in particular. It remains an untested, an unfulfilled promise, but this example shows we're getting closer to perhaps inventing, as Lumina is hoping we will do, a model that other states can follow. Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion?
That as a system, $50.1 million was collected in revenue and $49 million was spent on athletics. And that amount represented about 4.87% of the all funds operating budget that was spent in fiscal year 11. The largest sources of revenue for athletics were direct institutional support, and that includes the value of institutional resources for current operations, indirect facilities and administrative support, and that includes the value of facilities provided and administrative costs, ticket sales, and contributions. As a system, the largest expenses went for coaching and support staff salaries and benefits, athletic student aid, team travel, direct facilities expenses, other operating, and indirect facilities and administrative support. Moving across the tabs, I also did want to point out that Bozeman and Missoula each have a specific audit done in accordance with NCAA guidelines, and both campuses received a clean audit. So that means we have reliance on the amounts that are presented here. Moving across to the next tab, Summer, we have student athlete information. And this summarizes participants by sport, residency, and gender. And then at the bottom of the page, there is a note to indicate by campus whether the athletes exceed the general student population for graduation rates and GPAs. And the last schedule on the agenda is a summary of the financial aid by campus. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about the indirect administrative support, the direct institutional support of 39%, $19.3 million. Where is the trend on that? Is that going up, going down? Has it always been around that amount? Obviously a fairly large number.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent. All of our percentages of our large revenues and our large expenditures have remained very consistent throughout the reporting periods. It was a little larger because of some work that MSU had done on their stadium. But
I just need to comment. Of course, we all saw some newspaper articles circulate that University of Montana accounted for some 70-odd% of the ticket sales, and I received about 3 or 4 phone calls from very interested people over in Bozeman wanting to get that. I directed them all to the webpage and said it's up to you to fix that, so it'll be interesting to see what happens, but they were sure interested, and they wanted to see what they could do about evening that out, so that could be a good thing for all of us. Mm-hmm. And congratulations to you on that.
Any other comments or questions? Discussion? Great, Director Hauser, thanks so much for your report. The next item, I know we've got some staff members from the Commissioner's Office to talk about it, but it's an information item that's been vetted and presented, and kind of an exciting one. As you know, and I think this is in great context as it relates to our affordability conversation. One of the things that we're realizing very early on in that is that the education surrounding responsibilities of those who intend to go to college or help send their children go to college are responsibilities that you can never take on too early. Whether it's understanding what it is to take out a loan or starting some sort of financial preparation to help defray the expense once you get to college. The 529 plan inside of our state, which is the Montana Family Education Savings Plan, we've had a great long-standing relationship with the College Savings Bank as our program administrator. They oversee 2 sides of the equation, one the equity mutual fund side and one the CD business that you as an investor can participate in. And Amy Berry and Robin Graham from the office that works as our coordinators internally and worked with College Savings Bank on a bunch of ideas about how to incentivize more participation. And this is one of the ideas that has surfaced inside of the advisory committee, and the advisory committee has pushed it to us as a suggestion. It's kind of a compelling idea and not new by any means around the nation, but it's an incentive. If you are an active participant as a contributor to a 529 plan for whoever the beneficiary may be, yourself, your own student, you are entered into a random drawing pool where every month a deposit of $1,000 will be randomly chosen to go towards that participant's account. Again, not a new idea. We think it's something that will drive some participation. Of course, the legal work and Kathy's great eye on things have been in place. Unfortunately, Clay, you cannot, as a person who works directly with MFSLP, will not be a recipient of a $1,000 contribution, nor any of us at the table or anybody that works directly with that. So all of those important details have been attended to, and this is only an information item. They're moving forward with it. I consider it fun because I get to sit on that committee and report back to you guys when we get to do things, but it doesn't go without saying thank you to Amy Berry and Robin for all the hard work that they do on this. And as we continue this affordability and conversation moving forward, which I think is one of the most important conversations we've got in front of us at the moment, we've got to link these efforts. This by itself not connected with everything else. This incentive to drive people to participate goes nowhere unless we incorporate it with every initiative related to affordability that we have to engage in. So Tyler, I know that our ultimate goal, and Sylvia, our ultimate goal there is to kick off a strong communications plan, and there's good work being done right now, and make sure that we're correlating those things. So if there are any questions for Robin and Amy, I see Amy here still. I do not see Robin in the room, but if anybody's got any questions or thoughts on this. Great. Well, we'll relay it back to the committee that everybody nodded their heads and said good work. Right. or that you don't understand. That's fair. Level 1 memorandum. Sheila, you're going to have to help me remember what and how this is managed.
Deputy Commissioner Sylvia Moore is coming here,
Thank
and
you.
she will remind you through her memo that this one is to take a look. If you had any questions, bring them forward now.
Thanks, Dr. Moore. I apologize.
No problem. Shit. Thank you, Chairman Buchanan and members of the board. Just a quick point out on the level 1. This is just information, but one of the things that Regent Barrett always asks us about is, are we getting rid of anything? And there are a number of moratoriums and terminations and consolidations on this one. So, Regent Barrett, this one's for you. And then we could go to level 2, I think.
Please proceed. And
again, with all respect, Regent Barrett, this one also may be for you because you read so far ahead. But this one will be for action at the next meeting, and it is here so you kind of get a flavor of what is coming. The Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee meeting to discuss this with the committee will be on February 21, because February 20th is a holiday. And so we will move from our usual Monday to a Tuesday meeting, and I'll be sure that everybody gets reminded about that change in date, although Summer has posted it already on the web in terms of the change. So it would just be if there were any questions or concerns.
Regent Barrett.
Of course. Actually, it's just kind of a curiosity point for me. I noticed the program in Arabic at the University of Montana, and I'm wondering, just because I don't get it, why that would be, the language study would be housed in the Department of Anthropology instead of Modern Languages, where the rest of your language studies reside.
Regent Barrett, members of the board, it's a program in Arabic studies, so it's not just the language. It has components of the Arabic culture, Arabic world culture as well. And it just so happens that the faculty members who have the expertise in that area are members of the Department of Anthropology as opposed to the language department.
Yeah. Well,
There is good overlap, and the courses, of course, would apply toward language credits as well.
Yeah, well, I thought it was something like that, but I was just curious because I knew that you have cultural studies and other endeavors. They don't necessarily reside in a separate college of modern languages, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
If I may just make a comment, I would like to thank you, Regent Barrett, on this issue in particular. Almost from your first meeting, you've been the conscience of the board in regard to academic necessity, spreading ourselves too thin, academic quality. From day one, I think the chair of the board and your fellow board members put you on the budget committee, and you always said, I can't wait till I get a chance to be on the academic committee, and we could soon see why. I would like to note, it's possible, I mean, you've been now a regent for 7 years, and almost 7 years. It's very impressive. And the fact that you have focused the hot light of attention on academic strength and academic quality is certainly one of the great attributes you've brought to the board, and I just would like to thank you for that.
Any other comments or thoughts? Great, Deputy Commissioner Moore, thank you so much. I think we carry forward there.
Moving on to research.
Please.
For the members of the board, the January meeting, as soon as I got here in 2008, and then we had a January meeting in 2009 that had a heavy focus on research, so we just have tried to keep it that way. Maybe in a little bit different flavor. But at any rate, what has happened in that time is our policy 401, which deals with federal initiatives, has been impacted by the fact that there are no federal initiatives allowed anymore. And so what we have reported in the spirit of open-mindedness and open disclosure in this report from the campuses at the recommendation of the steering group from the Science and Technology Advisory Committee is the work that our federal relations representative does with the agencies to which we submit competitive grants. But nonetheless, it's very important that that funding be there. We also put a link to the strategic plan, and I would like, if possible, for Associate Commissioner Trevor to come up and talk a little bit about the update on the strategic plan.
Board, good afternoon. Just real quickly here, anytime we get a chance to link an item on your agenda to one of our areas in our strategic plan, we like to jump at it. Gives us a kind of a spread out way of reviewing the plan, where we don't have to tackle the whole thing at one time. So research and development, it's a component of the workforce and economic development portion of your plan. The objective, one of the objectives within this goal is to increase research and development expenditures or receipts. That's how we measure it. This year, I just got done updating this. I thought it'd be interesting to include a comparison of where Montana is to the other western states, and that's what you see in the first bar chart there. We've done great in the last 10 years of increasing our research and development. We've doubled it. But take a look where we are in comparison to the western states. We're still on the far end of the tail. Down below that is a chart that shows you by campus the research and development expenditures. That is directly related to our research reports. The data above come from a different source, so they don't jibe perfectly, only off by a couple of million though, and in the world of 180 millions, it's not too big of a deal. So you can see the trend there. It's kind of been up and down. Stimulus funds gave us an injection in 2010. The objective below that is to increase technology licenses within Montana businesses, and again, this relates back to either 401 or 404. I'm not sure which part of your policy to report these. This is a roll-up of those figures for our system. And then again, as with every strategic plan goal, on the left-hand side, you'll see some of our current initiatives that we have as a system, and Deputy Commissioner Moore can give you more detail on those if you'd like. Mr. Chair, that's all for the strategic plan.
Regent Barrett.
Yeah, I have one question. My memory is, and I guess I don't know if this still exists in the world where there are no congressionally directed initiatives, previously known as earmarks. But at the time, in fact, at your 2009 meeting, which was had an element of suspense about it, I think we adopted a policy that required us to, prior to making any initiatives, that the system is directing to our delegation that those reports be shared with the governor's office. Is that all mooted now by the environment? And if not, then has that occurred?
That has occurred. Those reports come in and get posted with us. And remember, we gave the license to the commissioner as long as they were with government entities, that those did not have to come to you, that she could approve those. So it would have only have been the University of Montana a couple of years ago had one that was with an outside agency. They brought that forward to you for approval before they went forward. But and that was on a boiler of some kind.
I remember it. Thank you for reminding me that. I'd forgotten that we delegated that.
This has been, I think, exciting in terms of the growth in tech transfer that's going on. And I see this continuing, and I don't know if you want to have the presidents chime in on any of that or not. I know we're a little bit pressed for time today, but the reports to some extent speak for themselves. Before I would turn that back over for them, I would just briefly mention that the Policy 404 is a new policy that we amended, or it's not a new policy, but we amended it in November because of an audit to look at our F&A expenses in terms of the unrecovered F&A from state agencies. That was an audit finding at both of our major campuses. We thought it was a little backwards that we were being blamed for people not paying us, but that is where it is. And so we are now reporting this at this time of the year on a regular basis.
Any other questions, thoughts? Yeah, Professor Landsberg.
I'll be quick on this, but I mean, when I see numbers like that, I think we all feel amount of pride. And as a faculty member in the system, I look at those and I want to say, I mean, as you know, those are numbers on a page, but you're looking at blood, sweat, and tears of, I mean, you could say all people in the system, but certainly faculty doing research to bring that money in, the institutional infrastructure that makes it possible, the leadership, also visionary leadership that produces money, that produces knowledge, and that is one of our products, certainly, knowledge that we disseminate around the world, I mean, to students and through transfer anyway. So I don't know if that's a point of pride for me to say add away, but.
Thanks, Marvin. Great comments. President Engstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I just want to make a few points about the research report. We do tend to focus on dollars of federal and other kinds of grants, and I just want to remind everyone that that is a big component of the research and creative scholarship, but it is not the full picture. So there are many faculty members and students on all of our campuses engaged in research and creative scholarship that isn't reflected just in the dollars of federal funding. The humanists, the creative writers, the educators, the language people, they are all doing great competitive scholarship that isn't necessarily reflected just in dollars and cents. I just wanted to remind us all of that. And I'd like to make two other points that speak to the collaborative atmosphere that we have going on now. Again, just as a bit of very recent history, when both President Cruzado and I were established in our offices as presidents, with the help of, it was Regent Barrett and I think Regent Christian and Commissioner Stearns, we had a conversation about our representation in Washington, which previous to this had been our own deal. We had our representation, MSU had representation, and so on. And even I think some of the other campuses had their individual representatives helping us in Washington. But we did have a discussion, and we agreed to move to a single representative firm in Washington. And now, only about a year later, I just want to tell you that that is off to a great start. I think the level of conversation about what's happening in Washington, how it relates to our research programs is at a much higher level. And it obviously gives us the opportunity to think hard about what we're doing together. So it was a good step forward. I think it even saved MSU a little money because as we doubled the contract, they gave us a little bit of a break. The other piece of collaborative news is this. I think it was at the last meeting that you approved the Montana Institute on Ecosystems. That is a joint effort between both the MSU and the UM side of the system. And the joint leadership of that has invited faculty members to be essentially affiliates or associates with that new Ecosystem Institute. As of today, 200 faculty members have come forward saying they wanted to be associated with that institute. Faculty members, not just from MSU and UM, but from Montana Tech, not just from the sciences, but places like the business school, the pharmaceutical sciences, the law school, and so on. So this is a tremendous collaborative success story. It's only a month old, but it's getting off to a fantastic start. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that, and thank you for your work in approving that.
Excellent comments. Any further discussion? Deputy Commissioner Moore, thank you. Great reports all the way around. I think Deputy Commissioner Robinson, Mick, is item H, Student Health Insurance Plan. I believe that is your point. Well, Connie looks like she'll be here. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Connie Welsh. I'm Director of Benefits for the Montana University System. We wanted to provide you with a brief update on the status of the student health insurance program. The student health insurance program, I think many of you are familiar with, was started about 16 years ago, and for two primary reasons. One is we had students at campuses in various communities that would have medical issues, and they may not have been able to pay for those issues. That uncompensated care really created a situation for those communities where those hospitals and providers absorbed that loss. So they approached us about doing a health insurance plan. In addition, we had employees or students who had medical losses, and that may have impacted their ability to continue with other things in life, such as their pursuit of higher education. So for those two reasons, the plan was created about 16 years ago. The directors of the two student health centers at Montana State University and the University of Montana, Jim Mitchell and Rick Curry, respectively, work with a group across the campuses and across the system to manage this plan. The plan has worked very well. It's a fully insured plan. We purchase it currently. Our vendor is Blue Cross Blue Shield. As of September, we got a report for the first time in the 16-year history of our program. Our claims costs exceeded the revenue that we were bringing in, and by a substantial amount. So at least initial indications at this point, and we're tracking claims through December, we're looking at an increase in cost to students if this trend continues of about 35 to 40% in the premiums that they would pay for the student health insurance. Currently, that amount is $852 per semester. We're looking at going well over $1,000. So a couple quick things. What kind of created that situation, and then what might be some of the things that we can do to mitigate that? Well, one of the things that happened is really a change in the profile of the folks who are using the plan. Last year, under the federal health care reform, for the first time, children who are 16 or 26 years of age and under could stay on their parents' health care plans. So what we saw is a real drop-off in students who are 26 years of age and under enrolling in the program. We have about 7,500 students enrolled in the program. So at the same time, we saw an increase in people who were age bands about 30 to 45. And particularly in the 40 to 45 age band, we had a real increase in folks. So there's some indication, we think, at this point that people accessing the plan may be ones who are looking for the insurance more than for the educational opportunity. Because currently what we require is if you are taking 4 credits or more, you either have to demonstrate that you have health insurance or you have to purchase the student plan. So when you look at $852 for a semester, that's a fairly inexpensive plan for someone who has severe health needs. We had, it's a limited plan, so it has a maximum benefit of $200,000 in a lifetime. And we saw a tripling of folks who had claims that ran between $100,000 and $200,000. So we had 5 in 2010, we had 15 last year. So it indicates that we've got something changing in the environment here. We also have a couple other things that go on. We do what we call a soft waiver, kind of the honor system. We do not require that people provide evidence of insurance. So if you look out on the systems, you can see that students can go in as they're enrolling, and they can actually go online and waive the fee, click to waive the fee. So we think that there are a number of folks, it's an affordability issue, so there may be folks who are not participating who truly don't have coverage. So we may look at tightening up that waiver system. That's one opportunity. We do allow dependents on the plan. Our dependents use about $2 in medical care for every $1 that they pay in premium. So we didn't see an escalation of that in the last year, but we've had that trend for some time. So we may want to consider what we want to do as far as covering dependents. Those are all options that we can take a look at. We did meet with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Our process is we start the renewal in March, is typically when we really do the arm wrestling negotiations, if you will. And so we have asked them to do several things. One is look at age rating, which we would look at the initial groups that we asked them to look at are under age 30, age 30 to 50 and 50 and over, and tell us if that's going to help us out as far as charging people more appropriately for the rates and align the folks who are using the cost or the care with the cost for the care. So there are a number of things that we're taking a look at this point. That's a substantial increase. It's a substantial hit to students' affordability. So we wanted to provide you an opportunity to hear about this, and we'll keep you apprised as we get more information.
Sobering report. Thank you. Yeah, Regent McLean.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. It is indeed sobering, and I've had a number of conversations with Mick Robinson as well as Connie and as well as our new commissioner about this. It is something that I'm hopeful that we can have some meaningful conversations on in the days and weeks to come, and hopefully offer some solutions, at least from a policy perspective and an advocacy perspective, so that you have a clear direction as you move forward in March. It is something that will have a clear impact on our students, and we appreciate your time and your efforts and your advocacy on behalf of our students, and I look forward to future communications with you.
Regent Barrett.
Excuse me, is 4 credits a typical threshold for, I mean, let's say regionally or nationally, a typical threshold to obtain health insurance? That is, are we in the mix, or are we an outlier on that?
Regent Barrett, I can't answer that specifically. We changed it from 7 credits to 4 credits a number of years ago, or a couple of years ago, in order to increase the pool of people paying, but I could get that information for you.
Yeah, well, the comments you made, you may have people actually taking classes to shop for health insurance because it's great coverage, and that's just a fraction of the market cost. It's not a spot we want to be in. Though we encourage education, clearly we can't create a system that's really an alternate market for health coverage. So that's why I'm wondering about that. I probably won't be a clear-cut answer, but I can see something going on there that maybe we have to consider.
One of the things that we're doing is we're pulling data from the campuses to take a look at those who are enrolled in the program and stratify that with the number of credits that we're taking. So we're looking at a history to see what kind of utilization patterns happen for people depending on how they enrolled, how many credits they were taking.
Perhaps I missed this, but has there been incremental, smaller increases over a period of years versus this incredible spike that you're discussing now? And is annually there's a small increase built into this?
Yes, Regent Tuss, there is. We would have increases periodically. So generally, healthcare costs, the trend is going to go up each year. So we've had fairly static experience. It will go up more because healthcare costs will escalate more over a certain time period and then slow down. But yeah, we've kind of tracked along and increased that. So even with the $852, that's been of concern because that amount, again, has escalated much faster than many other costs for students.
Mr. Vice Chair, may I ask a question of Connie? It may be, my recollection is that our consortium for student health insurance is still pretty fresh. I mean, it's just a few years ago that representatives from the MSU and UM campuses said, why don't we pool together? It used to be that it was pretty much every campus trying to do it by itself, and the premiums as a result were not collectively negotiated, and they were either higher or more likely the benefit. For example, when I was chancellor at UM Western, students were not paying this much, but what little they were getting a maximum $50,000, not $200,000 benefit. And so it really was not that adequate a policy. So by approving, again, since I've been commissioner, a joint approach, I think it's only 5 or 6 years ago. Am I not right, Connie? Yeah. So we're still developing data. Now, I would also like to say, never to be sneezed at in terms of the affordability issue for students, but just rounding off, and you say that for $1,800 a year, let's say $900, or let's say $2,000 a year, the students get all 12 months of insurance. And you divide that into the cost, they're still getting health insurance at by far a more economical rate than they would be getting it in any other purchase venue. So it's evolving, and perhaps Dean Bingham can comment on it, because a couple years ago, the Helena College of Technology and I believe Great Falls came in, and it was an affordability issue because all of a sudden their students needed to pay $850 a semester when previously they did not. But I see him prepared to comment on that. This is an evolving issue, but basically a very student-friendly issue in how it has been initiated and evolving in the last 5 years, in my judgment, but I would be happy to be, correct?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, commissioner, yeah, several years, actually just a couple years ago, the two-year colleges came into it, and I think there was a concern that policy didn't really require two-year colleges or the COTs to actually require the students to have insurance. And so we came under the 4 credit hour threshold also. And I think there's no dispute that the dollar value for that insurance is great. But we have to also remember that our students don't always equate that benefit to what it's actually costing them. And Connie, if I'm not mistaken, my understanding that when this insurance goes up to the students, it's about a $1,200 ticket, give or take. Mm-hmm. Compare that to $1,500 a semester for tuition. It could get to the point where insurance is costing more than tuition at the tier colleges. That's a deal breaker for a lot of our students.
Well, Connie, thank you. We promise not to kill the messenger, especially when you come so early in the process to help keep us abreast of this. Thank you very much for your leadership on our behalf there. Much appreciated. Any further comments before Connie walks away? Marvin.
I'm going to add one item to the information list.
Please, feel free.
Just very briefly, if I could take a second. At MSU, we have a beginning of a semester convocation, and I know last January at this meeting, I handed around just a quick flyer and an update, not really trying to get attention just for our campus, but just as another example of what faculty are doing in our system. So if I could just take a minute, I'll just hand this around. President Cruzado and Provost Potvin hosted this event. I mean, it's just a wonderful event, and I know Clay was there, and it's just a list of the faculty awards that we give out are done at this time of the year on this cycle. So there's just a brief bio of some of the projects and winners of these projects out there, just as another chance for you to see in print. And in the newspaper too, they ran this nice ad with some of my colleagues' faces on it. So I'll just zip this around, and you can take a look. And if I know Dave Beck, my counterpart in Missoula, they got snowed in this morning, so they didn't show up. Otherwise, he would have been handing out something, I think, similar from there. And also, before it goes by, and I know it was on the consent agenda, but since we're talking about faculty, you already passed this forward, but there are a couple faculty on there who are up for emeritus status, getting, as they retire, and I think it's worth at least in the public forum just mentioning their names as we go by, as long as I'm celebrating faculty. But I see Carol Van Valkenburg, James Bowder, and Cliff Montaigne. Colleagues at my campus that I know that have dedicated years of service to this institution. So I'm drawing attention to them at this time too. Is he? I don't know.
He is, I think.
Yeah. But that's 2 generations of emeritus professors for that family.
Marvin, thank you. You're using your opportunity to be a part of this conversation very productively in doing this. It's kind of like we're talking about before with the research. It may be dollars in one conversation, but it's people that's getting it done, and I appreciate and welcome more opportunities for it. Thank you. Any comments or thoughts for Marvin? Great. Moving down the agenda. Election of officers. I want to share a couple thoughts here and move on with this one. I earlier was talking quite a bit about good faith, and It's prompted me to do some thinking about this a little bit. Earlier last week, I expressed an interest to my fellow board members to continue in leadership here and started to think about what agenda item is in front of us. And as I look at what is in front of us, we've got about 18 months, 15 months of building, preparing, and implementing a legislative agenda, which is primarily budget issues. And I know that when I think about what responsibilities lie within leadership, you've got to often set aside your own personal opinions, things that are important to you, to reflect the will of a board. And I started to think about, how do I gauge if I'm capable of doing this, if I want to do it? Because in the last 6 months, as I've sat in leadership here, we haven't had many issues where I've had to be that consistent one vote going against the direction of the will of the board. And fair to my naivete, this board's changed a lot since I've been on here for 5 years now. And it used to be 4-3 votes, and then it was 4-2 votes, or 5-2 votes. And the more I think about it, I think that the leadership, well, let me say this. We had an agenda item today that really tested me for that. And I really struggled with an element of an agenda item, because to me, as any person, whether you're in leadership or if you're a member of a body like this, you've got to be true to a few things. You've got to be true to yourself, and you've got to be true to the people who with you work. And I was very inconsistent today on a particular vote. And I agonized very hard over it because I voted no on almost identical items with 2 other people earlier in this process. And I don't know that I'm the right. I think there are better voices on this board to provide the type of leadership that I see needed to craft an agenda around a budget and to carry it with the full heart and commitment to make it successful as we go into this legislative process. So with that said, the floor would be open for nominations for election of officers. Regent Barrett.
Mr. Chairman, well, actually, we only have one office just because of our policy and procedure. When the chair is vacated and you elect a new chair, there's no automatic succession, but no other offices are up for election. Just that's the only one. They said officers.
So we've miscoded the item. It's election
of
office. Yep.
And then we have our regular elections in May.
Great.
So I would nominate Regent McLean for the position of chair.
Any other nominations on the floor? I believe the process is we have to make that nomination a motion. Is that correct?
I don't know, but if that's the case, I so move.
Is there a second to the nomination?
We don't require seconds.
Right, that's right. Any discussion or conversation from people in the room? Major, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to voice my support for Regent Barrett's nomination of Regent McLean. And I think that she would be a great advocate, especially with her own personal background as well, too, in the education system. And with her experience, I think it would be a great candidate for our new chair.
Any further discussion? Regent Tuss.
And Mr. Chairman, I think it's appropriate this time to also thank you for your leadership in this void that we've had in this very unusual situation. And certainly on behalf of this one regent, I'd like to thank you for what you've done to step up in this particular role.
But you're welcome. Great. There's been a motion to, thank you very much. Is there public comment related to the motion on the floor? Do I see Jen headed to the microphone? Great.
I think this is on. There it is. Regent Buchanan, thank you so much for the leadership that you've provided and will continue to provide. ASUM conferred over there, Regent. Regent McLean, we have appreciated every time you are in Missoula, you contact students. We pass you in the community, and you are always available for comment. You are always available to ask for mentorship and have always been open to the input from students. So this comes with a resounding, yes, thank you.
Any further discussion? or thoughts? Great. Seeing none, there's a motion on the floor to nominate and elect Regent McLean as the chair of the board. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Chair, this is your board.
Okay, we will reconvene. Before we move on, there are just two items that I'd like to address before we invite our panel to present in just a moment. The first of which is it's very important to recognize and to thank each of the board members for their nominations of me and their very kind comments. It is also important to recognize the extraordinarily large shoes that I have to fill in the vice chair sitting next to me and his chair before that, our chair before that. I thank you for this opportunity, and it will be a pleasure sitting beside each one of you as we move the agenda forward and serving the needs of our students across all of our campuses in the Montana University system. I thank you and look forward to all that we can do together. Before we move on to our agenda item, Regent Tuss visited with me about some exciting news that he received, and I will turn it over to him now to share that with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the course of the day, I received an email with regard to a very significant investment that the United States Economic Development Administration is making in MSU Northern. To the tune of $647,000. And given that this was just made today, I thought that perhaps if we could just take a couple of minutes and have Chancellor Limbaugh introduce this to all of us.
Chairwoman McLean, members of the board, it's not often that you get to make your first official comment publicly in such a celebratory manner. It's not often that it's so new that it's still fresh on my iPad. So with that, let me follow up on what Regent Tuss has said. And let me say I take no credit for this except to have the opportunity to officially announce it. The credit goes to Regent Tuss, to Mr. Kegel as our Dean of the College of Technical Sciences, and all the good folks in Havre have worked so hard on this. But as of today, it was announced that the U.S. Department of Commerce has awarded to Montana State University Northern and to the Bear Paw Development Corporation Northern Montana the award to the tune of $647,000 for the implementation of the North Central Montana Renewable Industry Initiative. And what this means, it's building on the biofuels research, and you've all been reading the clippings about what's been going on up there and what we just discovered there in our lab there in Havre. What this will allow us to do is to further the university's Bioenergy Center's technology transfer and research commercialization efforts in the region's emerging biodiesel production industry. Ultimately, it's projected it'll create 168 jobs and $90 million in private investment. That's an indication of what can be done in Havre and Northern. And my plan is that every time we're here, we're going to provide you more information about the great things that are happening up on the High Line. So, thank you very much. I'm glad I had the opportunity.
Congratulations, Regent Tuss. Congratulations to Havre. Congratulations to MSU Northern and to Mr. Kegel, if you would please express that to everyone involved and our appreciation for their hard work from the Board of Regents. So now, Dr. Moore, we will turn it over to you and your panel.
Thank you, Chairwoman McLean. That has a nice ring to it. Go women? Oh, just whatever. Sorry.
Is this like a club?
Yeah, it is. It's just, it's I'll stop. I only go radically feminist once every 5 years, and, it's okay. Summer, if you could put that other slide back up on the summit on February 14th. Regent Buchanan is going to be wrapping that one up, but that means that the ARSA committee is heavily engaged in that one. And I just wanted to bring it to the attention of everybody here to remember, you've had this out on your calendars, but this is the Strategic Resource Alignment Part 2. And Jose Cruz from Education Trust will be our keynote speaker. He's quite in demand around the country these days, and because of some connections to the Puerto Rican mafia, we are able to get him. Oh, no, that isn't the mafia. But anyway, it was one of those Puerto Rico connections. So anyway, we were very pleased that we will have Jose. And one of the reasons also I put this up is I think it's a good segue into some of the strategic planning that you, the board, have put in motion and the campuses are jumping on. And one of those is in graduate education. So at this point, I would turn it over to Associate Commissioner Trevor to talk about the strategic plan and that update, and then we'll go into the graduate education piece.
Madam Chair, members of the board, not unlike the research and development topic, taking the opportunity to link an agenda item to the strategic plan again, kind of get my modus operandi there. We have in front of you the graduate education portion of the plan. This is actually one of the newer portions of our plan. I think it was in about 2010. We added this in. It was sort of a missing component. So to start at a high level, and then again, we'll work down to the dashboard indicators, and I think you can relate dashboard indicators to campus level information and strategic plan metric to the rolled up system level data and objectives. The first objective here is to increase the number and percentage of graduate students in the Montana University system. So you see here a 10-year trend of graduate student in FTE, student FTE, and we've had some growth there. The blue line running across those bars indicates that while we've seen growth, the percentage of the FTE in terms of the total student population has not increased. So we've basically remained the same in the percent distribution of our graduate students in relation to undergraduate students. And that's not surprising. We've seen a big increase in 2 years, and so we're pushing on both ends of this thing. So to see a percent increase in this area with small numbers like this is going to be kind of tough. But we've seen a growth, and we've been growing in FTE. So, Summer, if I could get you to scroll down just a little bit, we get a little more detailed here under our second objective, which is related to degree production, and in particular, maintaining a strong concentration in science, technology, engineering, and math fields, STEM. And as a system, we take another 10-year, basically a 10-year look at this. We've increased graduate student FTE by 22% over the last 10 years, growing on all campuses except Northern, and I'll get into that when we hit the dashboard indicators. We've also seen an increase in our graduate degrees awarded per 100 graduate student FTE, so that's our productivity measure. That's increased fairly substantially from 39, which is sort of an arbitrary number because we're talking about degrees per 100 FTE, up to 44.4. Then we take a look at the percent STEM, and again, related back to our objective to increase not just degrees, but do it in the STEM disciplines. There apparently is a couple different ways of defining STEM. I was not aware of this until I had done it in one way and found out that there are numerous ways. So I chose the two on the opposite ends of the continuum, a very narrow definition and a very broad definition. The very narrow definition relates to just exactly what we're talking about here. Science, math, biology. There's a list of them here in fine print somewhere. Physical sciences, engineering, science technologies. And so we take a look at what percent of our degrees produced were in those narrow categories. And it's dropped slightly over that 10-year period of time. When we broaden it out, it's increased. And when you broaden it, you add in health sciences, you add in natural resources, ag, and then you see an increase. And so we're up to 43% of our degrees produced in STEM. So what does all that mean? Well, we then compare it to the region, and we're about at the same in the region with the narrow definition, maybe slightly under, and we're above the percent STEM in the broad categories. So there you go. You have your overall measure for the system. Now, Summer, if you can quickly click on the dashboard indicators, you now have a replication of that by institution. This is keeping in theme with our dashboard indicators, and for new board members, this has been going on for about a year now. We've worked our way through retention, completion, productivity, financial aid, and now with the opportunity in graduate education, we've hit on graduate education. So I don't even imagine to go through these numbers with you other than to give you this resource that you can look at on your own. The second page, which Summer don't go to, is a cheat sheet of this, and I can quickly hit on some points there related to the MUS, the number of degrees that we awarded. We've increased by 400, I mentioned, as a system. Both MSU Bozeman and Missoula basically increased by 200 degree recipients. The number of degrees produced per 100, as we indicated, our productivity measure has done well over the last 10 years. The campuses where the ratios had increased were at MSU Bozeman, MSU Northern, and Missoula. Related to our percent STEM, we mentioned that it had gone down in the narrow category, but up in the broad category. Since 2002, the fiscal year, the percent STEM degrees awarded in the narrow definition of this has dropped on all campuses. Conversely, when we look at the broadly defined STEM, it has increased on all campuses except Northern. So there you have it. We can put this in our bailiwick of dashboard indicators now, and when you start to look at them, we have them listed out there on our website. We've got a pretty impressive list of real detailed measures at the campus level. Looking forward to the next board meeting. I've had a request if I could update the retention dashboard indicator, as that was probably got the most attention from folks around the system. So without any other suggestions, I'd probably go that route. So if you want to touch on that with me individually, I'd be glad to take any suggestions. Madam Chair, that's all I have in terms of the strategic plan.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question, I guess, for both Deputy Commissioner Moore and Associate Commissioner Trevor. A dashboard indicator such as this, is there the likelihood that then you analyze it further in the academic research, student affairs, in terms of what does this really mean? I mean, I know you hear about it from different presidents who look at it and say, you know what that means on our campus is such and such. Or is it meaning if we're producing fewer or more STEM degrees, is that having an effect on producing science teachers in the state of Montana? I mean, do we get a step beyond dashboard indicators for the sake of the board? Or do you await our questions to explore it further?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Stearns, I would say we fall more on the side of wait your questions to explore it further, but I will guarantee you that these folks at the table can address those topics based upon their own campuses. I've seen that type of discourse go on with them. I have remained more on the cheat sheet side of this to try to keep it nice, short, and simple for the board, but they can touch on those issues.
Madam Chairman, I mean, that's one of the points I wanted to make, was that even if members of the board, you certainly, as these dashboard indicators come up, ask us. There's no such thing as a dumb question, but please be advised one of the particular values of it is that as the set of campuses know that we have, based on your strategic plan, we've identified dashboard indicators to highlight, the campuses become very engaged in terms of the accuracy of our data, what it might mean. They call Tyler far more frequently, but they call him far more frequently than they might otherwise. I mean, it's one of the ways I think you can feel reassured that your strategic plan, viewed through the lens of dashboard indicators, cause a focus on the campuses on important issues that even if you don't hear about it at your committees or at the full board, have a real definite result in terms of presidential and campus decisions.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Stearns, just to echo what the Commissioner has said, I always talk about my office being complaints are us, but sometimes it's also referee. Certain graduate deans who shall remain nameless have been known to send very passionate emails, even as they're in places like Washington, D.C., that might say that we may not have some of these things exactly correct. We don't ever really take umbrage with that, but we do try to say, let's have those discussions offline. And when we come to you, you sometimes see the compromised or cleaned up product as opposed to some of the down in the weeds duking it out. But there is no lack of passion in our system. At that, Summer, if you want to roll us into the slides, I'm going to turn it over to the good people that are with me, and I'm going to make them introduce themselves. And Carl, are you starting?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait for the slides. Madam Chair, members of the board, distinguished presidents, it's a great honor to be here to talk about graduate education. As was mentioned, some of us are quite passionate about this particular topic, so it's a great privilege to talk to you today. We thought we would give you a little bit of an overview of graduate programs. Carl Fox, I'm the Dean of the Graduate School, at Montana State University, Bozeman. Thank you. Graduate education really is a national and international issue, if you will. And today's graduate student is perhaps a lot different than maybe what you remember when you were on campus. And the actual typical graduate student today is about 34 years old, is going part-time, is typically a working adult, most often female, most often married, and with children. So the concept of the graduate student being a 22, 23, 24-year-old coming fresh out of an undergraduate program, that's true. We have those kinds of students, but graduate students today are much broader than that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Enrollment growth in graduate programs nationally over the last 20 years has been, to be honest, due to increases in enrollment by women and underrepresented minorities. And so the greatest population in terms of growth that we've seen nationally is in those two groups. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind and note that as we move forward. Oftentimes, the major barrier for graduate students is simply financial. Many of you know there are no Pell Grants for graduate students. Federal assistance is primarily and almost exclusively based on loans. There are no other financial opportunities other than university-based assistantships, fellowships, scholarships, sometimes from private foundations. But we are very confined in a way to the opportunities to support our graduate students, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. Another trend that you see today in graduate education is clearly in the interdisciplinary arena, as well as in professional degree programs in science and engineering. I read a report last night from the National Science Foundation. Professional science master's degree programs at approximately 240, there are 241 programs nationally at 111 campuses. The enrollment last year increased 15% alone. So what we're seeing is a marrying of science, engineering, business, all being brought together to serve working professionals who need to move forward in their own personal occupations and careers. The other thing we're seeing, and I was just in Washington, D.C. last week, at the graduate level, I know we hear a lot about this at the undergraduate level, but an emphasis on careers and jobs. The legislature in D.C. is looking for where are these students ending up relative to careers and jobs. So for us as universities, we also are very interested in this, and it's a kind of a new focus for graduate education. Finally, let me say before I move to our campuses, one of the things we realized across the Montana University system is that if we collaborated and worked together, we suddenly could go from a university of about 14,000 students to a university of about 30,000 students, which puts us in the same kind of ballpark with the University of Michigan, Wisconsin, Berkeley. Suddenly, if we start working together, we can offer degree programs that are comparable and perhaps we would say better than many of the large campuses. So So if we could go to the next slide. Just really quickly, just a mix of some of the programs at our universities in Bozeman. You see we offer both doctoral and master's degrees. We also have graduate certificate programs. 84% of our programs are in the STEM fields. We're very, as you know, very heavy in science and engineering. But we also offer degrees in the humanities, business, architecture, Native American studies, and you can see those listed there. One of the programs I'll just highlight very quickly is a collaborative interdisciplinary program on our campus. It's 11 different departments across 3 different colleges. And what we do in this program is we've been able to pull together some funds to offer doctoral fellowships. We are able to offer about 10 per year. We get about 100 applications nationally. These are the best of the best students. These are students who have undergraduate GPAs 3.8, 3.9. They're just outstanding students. So it's something we've tried to do to be more interdisciplinary and be more competitive. The next slide.
Oh, it's to me already. I think we skipped a slide, didn't we?
Slide,
I
yeah.
think we skipped one.
Yep.
No? Well, somehow it didn't get on there. So we're going to find out something because there is a slide dealing with MSU programs at Billings and Northern.
Maybe I should just mention that while we're here. So I also wanted to point out we also have graduate programs at both Northern and at Billings. The difference between those programs and what we offer, I'll just say on the Bozeman and Missoula campuses, is they're very focused. They're master's degree programs. They tend to be very focused on professional degrees or professional kinds of careers. Just as a general example, in Billings, we have degree programs in health administration, in leadership, and exercise training and science. They have programs in public administration and public relations, in education, and in psychology. At Northern, their 2 master's programs are in counselor education and learning development. So while their programs tend to be very focused and very professional oriented, on the Missoula and Bozeman campus, we tend to be much broader and operate at the doctoral level, primarily, as you can see, in the STEM field. So now I'll turn it to Perry.
Okay, thank you. And I think you all know me, but I'm Perry Brown. I'm provost at the University of Montana. I am substituting for Stephen Sprang, who is associate provost and dean of the graduate school in Missoula. And as of an hour ago, he was still in his half-mile-long driveway trying to get out. So I don't know. I talked to his wife. She said, you don't want to know. So I didn't pursue it any further than that. So I'll just take a little piece of this and just talk about the University of Montana, Missoula, and then make a note of some programs at Tech as well. But at Missoula, we have the doctoral programs of the same kind that Carl just talked about, PhD, EDD, those kinds. But we also have professional doctoral programs, the JD, and things like physical therapy and the Doctor of Pharmacy. And those are professional doctoral programs, not too dissimilar to the professional master's degree programs that Carl just mentioned to you, but they're at the doctoral level. Then we have master's degrees and certificates as well. Now, on our campus, about 60% of the degree programs we have are in the STEM disciplines, because we also have quite a few graduate degrees that are in social sciences and the humanities. And that's reflective of the kind of campus that we have that is really very strong in the humanities, in particular history, philosophy, those kinds of areas. So it's very important for us. And that reduces the number of STEM, or the proportion of STEM degrees that we have. And then we have certain programs, just like at the MSU Bozeman campus, that are collaborative, interdisciplinary programs across the campus. And those are on the PowerPoint on the slide that's up there. Again, at Tech, which we did get that slide in there. I'm not sure what happened to the other one, but it's up now. Oh, it's up now. Yeah. Okay, but anyway, at the Tech campus, there are, again, these master's degrees that are very professionally focused, particularly in a broad swath of engineering disciplines that really represents the long and distinguished history of that campus with regard to mining and petroleum and engineering activities. But they also have, a few other things that are going on that are broader in geochemistry, geosciences, interdisciplinary programs and so forth that are at Tech, but just a nice collection of degrees that are very heavily STEM oriented. So anyway, at both Tech and at Missoula, we have robust graduate programs right now that are providing opportunities for people to go beyond their bachelor's degree education. Some people that graduate from our programs at schools in Montana and some that come from elsewhere, both the rest of this nation and internationally. I would say also that one of the important things, and it's a point I often make about graduate education, is we're often producing the kinds of people that go out and start new companies or go into agencies with new processes and new kinds of technologies, and they create jobs for other people. And so as we look at the opportunities that are created by people that go through graduate programs, then you see people who are graduating from our two-year programs and graduating from our bachelor's degree programs having a marketplace to enter because of some of the innovation activity that these people are engaged in. And that's one of the important things about graduate education on all of our campuses of the university, of the Montana University system. I'm going to turn it back to Carl because he wants to talk a little bit about what we call MUGs.
So about a year ago, we started thinking about how we could better work together as a system at the graduate level. And I asked Sylvia, how do we kind of make this initiative official? She said, report it to the board. So here we are reporting it to the board. And you may or may not like the MUGS acronym, but it made sense, so we decided to stick with it. We have met twice now. We met the first time in Bozeman about a year ago, and then we recently were up in Havre and met at Northern. And we have actually agreed on a number of collaborative ventures, some of which we've accomplished already, some of which are sort of going to take a little bit longer. I just wanted to point out a couple of those. Collaborative recruiting. We routinely get calls from students who say, I'm really interested in a graduate degree program in journalism. And our response is, well, we don't have a grad program in journalism, but we sure know who does. And so the call goes up to Perry's shop. And so what we've been doing is figuring out how can we better work together. We frequently go to recruiting kinds of events and fairs. And what we've decided is we are creating a single document, and we're in the process of doing that. It'll be about 1 page. We'll put all the programs together on all of our campuses so that when MSU Bozeman is out recruiting, we're not just recruiting for Bozeman, we're recruiting for Missoula and Northern, we're recruiting for Billings, we're recruiting for Tech, because we have certainly similar programs, but we also have very different programs. Graduate education, as you probably know, is very personal. And so for a lot of our students, they come to work with specific faculty. So wherever those faculty happen to be, our view is that's a good thing for Montana, it's a good thing for the university system. So we're already doing that. Faculty participation, again, we've done this routinely, I think perhaps more between Bozeman and Missoula. We have joint graduate programs. We're trying to expand that participation with Northern, with Billings, and with Tech. And so you'll see more and more of these initiatives come forward. We actually have faculty, and it was mentioned, President Engstrom mentioned the Institute of Ecosystems and the number of faculty that are participating in that collaborative effort. And that's the kind of thing we're promoting at the graduate level. Access to courses across the MUS. One of the things we've already done and agreed on is that if you are a graduate student at any one of our campuses and have been accepted into a graduate program and you want to take a course at one of the other campuses, you do not need to reapply. We have created a very simple 1 page. We just need to get you into the system. Right now I'm working on a course actually with our colleagues at Montana Tech. We have some students on the Bozeman campus that want to take this course this semester. And so my view is we make it transparent to the students. We'll figure out the bookkeeping on the back end, and we can do that. If we can't do that, I think we need to go back to the drawing board. We are working on a single common application. Now, this is going to take a little bit more time, but it turns out that Missoula and Northern and I think Tech and Billings all use a vendor called CollegeNet. And they provide a great application. What we'd like to do, and this is a little bit of a dream perhaps on my part, is to create a single application so we could literally move these applications around our campuses to find homes for these students in the graduate program that will meet their career goals and needs and best suits those students, and so that we all then actually can be quite successful. And the last thing I mentioned, we're working on our doctoral student internships. One of the challenges for our smaller campuses, their faculty really have an interest in being scholars and doing research. However, because of the teaching loads, it's often difficult for them. On the other hand, our doctoral students really need to have teaching experience if they have a career goal to become a faculty member. So what we're looking at is a possible opportunity for our doctoral students, once they've pretty much finished their degree, perhaps even as a postdoc, to go serve in an internship at Northern or perhaps in Billings or at Tech, where they can provide some teaching assistance to allow those faculty members to kind of move their scholarly research activities forward. So we are planning a retreat in the spring. We're looking at an idea perhaps of bringing in a couple outside consultants to look at all of our graduate programs in total and give us some guidance. I'm really excited about this opportunity because, as Perry and I talked about it when I first came in, that we suddenly go from a smaller campus of 14,000 to all of a sudden we're a big campus with lots and lots of opportunities. And we just heard about the biofuels project. And one of the things that I got excited when we went to Havre was exactly that. Great opportunities for our students, great opportunities for faculty to collaborate. So all in all, I think just sitting together and discussing where we can work together has just been for me, it's just been a fabulous exercise, and we look forward to doing more.
Thank you, Dr. Fox.
If I may just make one comment about the handout we passed out. Because a comment had come up in the last board meeting, somebody said, well, a lot of new board members and not everybody knowing what the full portfolio is of doctoral programs on the campuses. We just made a list of both sides of the thing, MSU and doctoral programs, and we highlighted for you which were the STEM programs as well, just so that you could see that. So you've got the full portfolio of current doctoral programs in the MUS arena.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from members of the board or any of the panelists? Regent Teal.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment. I know that graduate education is really at the center of the research enterprise. And because of that, it's also at the center of a large part of the university system's economic impact to the state. I think all of the ideas that you talked about today, first of all, are ideas I hadn't heard before. They're, I think, really innovative, really new, and that's really exciting. So congratulations. I'm really interested to see what can happen with MUGs in the future.
Thank you, Regent Teal. Regent Buchanan?
So did I hear you correctly that if I apply for your graduate program at MSU and I find out that the real program I want is at U of M, I don't have to reapply at U of M?
No, what I said was if you wanted to if you were accepted into the graduate program, let's say at the University of Montana, Missoula, and you wanted to take a course from the Bozeman campus, that we wouldn't make you reapply, because normally to take a course on a campus, you have to be accepted into the graduate program, into a graduate degree program. So eventually, maybe we'll get to that point where we're, essentially having one single application, which would allow you then to move among our campuses. We're not quite there yet, but what we have been able to do is to try to make it as easy as possible for you to take courses on the other campuses while you are, let's say, a graduate student in Bozeman, Missoula, at Northern, wherever you happen to be.
Commissioner Stearns.
A follow-up to that question, Dr. Fox, yes, is by doing that, aren't you addressing most of the needs of the graduate students? In other words, they probably know for the most part, where the home campus was for the degree they wanted. But let's say you're working on a PhD in history. What I hear you telling us, I think, is that if that graduate student for the PhD in history wanted to take a couple of courses in his or her graduate program from MSU instead of UM, it would be much easier now than it would have been previously.
Exactly. They wouldn't have to go through a full graduate school application process. For us, it's paying their $60. It's submitting transcripts. It's getting letters of recommendation. It's a fairly, I won't say onerous, but it's certainly a time-consuming process for students
Great
to have
progress.
to do
I
that.
mean, you sort of wonder, like, why didn't we do this a long time ago? But I'm not going to take that away from congratulations for having done it.
Other questions? Regent Barrett?
Yeah, I want to commend you too. I mean, just the concept of marketing this resource as a system is, it's just earth-shaking. You know, it's such a change and it's such a positive thing that, again, all I can say is I really appreciate that effort and keep going. That's a good thing.
Thank you.
You don't know, it's
Commissioner
comedy, do you?
Christian.
Thank you. With Regent Barrett, I mean, for some of us that have been around on the board for a while, I don't know if the newcomers can fully appreciate the change of tide here. It truly is. We were just commenting. It's pretty amazing to see Montana State and University of Montana on one piece of paper, let alone the same font. I mean, it truly is incredible, and the presidents, along with everyone working on this collaboration. You go back to even the hirings. It was one of the things we've stressed as we've made these changes, and it just appears to be so refreshing in such a new day. And to the presidents, congratulations for supporting these kind of efforts, and to all that are working on it. It truly is what Montana needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Regent Tuss.
We already have two. Is Montana creating the template for this? Or did you look at other small states that are combining the University of South Dakota and South Dakota State? Or is this something that we're kind of on the leading edge on?
Well, that's a good question. And you could ask the gentleman sitting to your left about South Dakota, because he's an expert. But let me just comment, this is personal to me, because in my graduate degree program at the University of Minnesota, my master's program, I had an interdisciplinary degree, and I worked across departments, and my degree is in an area that there is no department. And then I did a PhD at Arizona State University, and I actually spent more than half my time at the University of Arizona. And you want to talk about a rivalry between the two schools? It's severe. But it's always been my feeling that for us to be competitive and for us to be really successful is through collaboration. And the graduate deans are kind of a unusual group of people, I think, in that we share everything. And we're very collaborative nationally. We're very collaborative, certainly in Montana. And this presentation, Steve Sprang and I, it was back and forth. Perry saw it, then Martha saw it, so it truly is a collaborative effort. And I don't know. I really don't know. That's a good question, if we're breaking new ground, but it just seemed like the right thing to do. No. This is just what made sense to us.
But I would comment, if I may, just on this, that we recognize the need, but I think it partly comes out of the kinds of personal experiences that people like Carl had, where he was doing this in his own graduate program. I actually did it in mine too, between Utah State and University of Michigan, and I moved back and forth. But that was pretty expensive, but it was something that was necessary to get what I needed to have done in my particular doctoral program. And we see that among some other people, and when you have those experiences, then you think, oh, maybe we can make this happen. And that's what's going on here. And so it's a Montana product.
And we do have a history of collaboration. Our Fish and Wildlife doctoral program has been between the two campuses for decades. And then the EPSCoR and the INBRE programs are great campus unifiers. But I think what we're trying to do here is also bring in some of the smaller schools that maybe haven't been quite so involved in some of those programs, and to help get them integrated into what we do and help them build their graduate programs.
Regent Tuss and Madam Chair, if I could just say the genesis of this actually came from an EPSCoR meeting on the Butte campus, where the worker bees kicked the administrative types out and said, go amuse yourselves because we have real work to do. And so that's when some of these ideas started getting kicked around, and then I think it's to great credit to Carl and others that took them forward. So I do believe that it is a bit unique, and it is because we are a small, intimate system that I think we are trying a little harder to get along. One other just quick thing, and I've mentioned this to both commissioners, and they both seem receptive. So now I would, bring it to the full board, but we have MUGS, Montana University Graduate Schools, and we have Montana University System Science and Technology Advisory Committee. And with your permission, if we change that to the Montana University Science and Technology Advisory Committee for Higher Education, we could have MUGS and a mustache.
Thank you. President Engstrom.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I have a question for Carl and Perry. Could you just take a few moments to talk about the role of graduate assistantships? And just, I think the board would be interested in knowing a little bit about, what kinds of students are on assistantships. Is it all of our graduate students? Is it a small fraction? What the level is. Just a little bit of a tutorial on assistantships.
Great. So at Montana State University, Bozeman, let me say, because as you may recall, 84% of our degree programs are in STEM fields. The expectation of students coming into those fields is that they will have some kind of an assistantship, either a research or teaching assistantship, that they will have a full tuition waiver. This is our competitors. And that they will actually, in most cases, have paid health insurance. That's the competition for us. So we look for ways to support those students. And as I pointed out, the perhaps most significant barrier to graduate education is financial, and it's supporting these students. We have approximately, headcount-wise, this past fall, around 2,000 graduate students. Of those 2,000 graduate students, roughly about 600 have some kind of either teaching or research assistantship. The teaching assistantships are typically supported through state dollars and assist in our instructional mission for the campus, teaching many of the laboratories, some of the intro courses. But most importantly, these assistantships are a key piece of their education. It's not a term of employment. It's part of what we provide for them and an opportunity for them to, as part of their graduate education. Research assistantships, on the other hand, are most often supported by contract and grant dollars. And as Marvin pointed out earlier, and you saw in the research report, these come about through the blood, sweat, and tears of our faculty members. And what they do is then write these funds into their contracts and grants to support these students. So on our campus, it's about 50-50 teaching versus research assistants. But the research assistants sort of web and flow depending upon how successful we are at garnering those external funds. And that's why you see some differences in enrollments and percents and things like that, because those dollars change, and they change all the time. So that's kind of the picture from our campus. And approximately a year ago, you gave us the authority for full-time graduate assistants to offer tuition at the resident rate. And that is a significant milestone, and I want to thank the board particularly for that. That has really helped us make our graduate programs competitive. So.
And let me just add a little bit. I mean, our story is very, very similar to the one that Carl has, except that because we have larger humanities and to some extent social science programs, there are fewer of those students that are on assistantships because they don't have research assistantships very often in those programs. They do participate greatly within the teaching assistant program, but they don't as much in the research program, because much of the research that goes on in, say, humanities discipline is single professor-based scholarship, that they're producing poems or books or artwork or something of that sort. And so they don't have the same need for laboratory assistants, field assistants, and things like that through the research assistantships. But we do have a fairly nice group of teaching assistants that we offer to those people, and they do participate very heavily in the instructional program in a variety of ways, all the way from teaching classes to being the lab monitors and lab assistants, the field leaders, and things of that sort. So the programs are very, very similar, though, in having these assistantship programs that are expected within the United States and Canada, certainly, but actually worldwide now. The institutions that we compete with in Australia and Britain and places like that have assistantships for their students as well, and they've copied the United States. And so our competition for the very, very best students is in fact worldwide. And we are fortunate to attract some of those, as Carl described some in one of the programs that they have. We both have certain programs that attract the very best in the world to our programs, and we would like to be able to raise up others to do that, and we're working to do that all the time so that we improve the opportunities for the people that are interested in graduate education.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Well, I'd like to thank each of you for the great presentation today. I think it lends itself nicely to a number of other conversations that we've been having at the table, specifically in regards to the Ecosystems Project, in regards to the Tech PhD project. We're talking about good things that will impact our students across the state, and this collaboration piece is so key. And I want to thank you for your efforts in that. It seems as we move forward, we have a couple of things to consider heftily, and perhaps the first of those being, how can we make graduate education more financially feasible for our graduate students? And that will be on our radar as we move forward. And then additionally, you mentioned it as a dream, but I think that one common application seems like a barrier that we ought to tackle and bring down, and do that in the name of making higher ed more accessible for our students. So I look forward to being part of that conversation. Thank you for the good work. At this point, then, we will ask for any comments for items not on the agenda. Any public comment for items not on the agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and members of the board, my name's Asa Homan. I'm a senator for the Associated Students of the University of Montana. I just wanted to briefly come before you real quick to just quickly talk about the matter that was presented earlier today in regards to the mandatory insurance fee that students in the university system do pay. I recently transferred from the COT in Missoula to the actual four-year school. So I understand how that fee relates to both COT students and to a traditional four-year school. As a COT student, the Blue Cross Blue Shield fee that I paid accounted for half of my total cost of attendance at the COT. And while it's not quite the half of my cost of attendance at the University of Montana, it is pretty close. While I understand the need in terms of liability and accountability for that fee, I just wanted to address you in terms of the cost and the mandate. For many students 18 to 25, we won't, by and large, use that health coverage. I have it, and I choose to have it. I think it's prudent to have it. But I do want to express to you that for many students, it is a burden, and a significant burden. It is for me, even though I do choose to have it, and I do think it's a good thing. Especially in a college of technology setting where it's such a significant portion of their tuition, and you're talking about students like myself coming back as a non-traditional and trying to jump back into the system, and many times without any sort of expected family contribution or any sort of family contribution, whether it's expected by the government that dictates our financial aid or whether it's just given. The legitimacy of this issue is such that in the time that presentation was made till just now, the executives of the Associated Students of the University of Montana and myself have discussed creating a committee of the members of ASUM to research and find out how it relates to our campus so that in future board meetings we can address that issue a little bit more concisely. But I just wanted to come before you today and really urge you to consider that as somebody who has been affected by that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ace. I appreciate your timely comments. They definitely had an impact. I appreciate it. Any further public comment? Okay, then we will recess until tomorrow at 8 when we have an executive session and then a goal-setting session at 9. We are now officially in recess.